Chapter 1272 Peaceful Departure. Chapter 1272, Peaceful Departure. Daming Monastery is gone. Su Zimo said indifferently. Gone? The eyes of the white-robed man shone with a blinding light and his tone was filled with disbelief. It was gone 10,000 years ago. Su Zimo knew that he was going to die and did not hide anything. Right now, I'm the only one left in Daming Monastery. You found the right person if you want to take revenge on the successor of Daming Monastery. Of course, there was also Monk Yuan Bei at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. However, Monk Yuan Bei was nearing the end of his lifespan and Su Zimo did not want to cause him any more trouble. In Su Zimo's opinion, there was a high chance that Dao Lord Blood Fiend was suppressed by Monk Daming for tens of thousands of years and bore an endless hatred towards the latter. Due to the relationship between Daming Monastery and Monk Daming, it was only normal for Dao Lord Blood Fiend to harbor resentment towards Daming Monastery. Unfortunately, the world had changed after 40,000 years. Dao Lord Blood Fiend's old acquaintances were no longer around. Even Daming Monastery was gone by now. The white-robed man had a complicated expression and remained silent. You're the only one left in Daming Monastery. A long time later, the white-robed man spoke slowly with endless emotions and sadness in his tone. The arm that held Su Zimo gradually loosened as well. His eyes looked into the distance with the vicissitudes of time. After waiting for a long time, Su Zimo could not help but frown when he saw that the white-robed man did not attack him. During this short while he had recovered some stamina as well and looked up. At that moment, the white-robed man stood opposite him and looked at the void in the distance, lost in thought. You. Just as Su Zimo was about to ask, the white-robed man's gaze shifted towards him once more. The eyes of the white-robed man were still clear and bright, possessing supreme wisdom. However, for some unknown reason, Su Zimo felt that the way the white-robed man looked at him was different from before. What do you want by coming to this grand Primordial ancient temple? Suddenly the white-robed man asked. The 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir and the 2 Buddha beads. Su Zimo did not hide anything. He had already obtained the 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir but unfortunately, he could not escape from this place. Who would have thought that there would be a peerless fiend that caused chaos in the cultivation world 40,000 years ago hidden in this ancient temple? Actually, not all the news released by me were fake. Suddenly the white-robed man said, there are indeed 2 Buddha beads in the Grand Primordial ancient temple. The moment he said that, the white-robed man flipped his palm. 2 Buddha beads laid in his palm. Su Zimo focused his gaze. The 2 Buddha beads were made from soul-nourishing wood and were the size of a longan. There were dermic seals etched on them and they possessed the same aura as the Mingwang prayer beads. This? Su Zimo had a bewildered expression. On the one hand, his essence spirit was already dried up and it was difficult for him to tell if the 2 Buddha beads were real or fake or if it was a trick of the white-robed man. On the other hand, even if the 2 Buddha beads were real, he did not know why the white-robed man did that. Without replying, the white-robed man removed the Mingwang prayer beads on Su Zimo's left wrist casually. He threaded the 2 Buddha beads in his palm within and injected dermic powers. The 6 Buddha beads shone brightly and emanated a flawless divine glow. This treasure of Daming Monastery that was destroyed and lost for 40,000 years was finally gathered. The white-robed man rubbed the 6 Buddha beads gently with his fingers and remained silent for a long time. Su Zimo revealed a hint of reluctance as well. The Mingwang prayer beads had finally recovered. Unfortunately, it was going to end up in the hands of others. Leave. Right then, the white-robed man suddenly spoke. Su Zimo could not hear clearly. Or rather, he could not believe what he had just heard. You've obtained the treasure you wanted from the Grand Primordial ancient temple. It's time for you to leave. The white-robed man said indifferently. This time round, Su Zimo heard everything clearly. However, he was puzzled. Why would the white-robed man let him off? The famous Dao Lord Blood Fiend became compassionate just because of the Mingwang prayer beads. Or was there something else? At that moment, Su Zimo was exhausted and weak mentally. His mind was in a mess and he could not figure out the connection between everything. The next moment, the white-robed man did something that shocked Su Zimo even more. Take it. He handed the complete Mingwang prayer beads back to Su Zimo. Su Zimo was stunned. Not only was the white-robed man releasing him, he even gave him the complete Mingwang prayer beads. Aren't you afraid that I'll look for you again? Su Zimo said, given my potential, You might not be my match if I cultivate to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm. If the two of them were at the same cultivation realm, although Suzimo had one less heaven and earth Dharma characteristic, the outcome of a fight between them would be unpredictable. Sure, I'll wait for you. The white-robed man said, I look forward to your victory over me as well. Although the white-robed man's words seemed to imply something, Suzimo could not understand. Frowning, Suzimo asked again, I already know about the secret behind the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. If I leave, no one will fall for your trap of setting up the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple again. There's no need for that anymore. The white-robed man said indifferently, after today, the blood in this hall is enough for me to advance to the conjoint body realm. The cultivators that are attracted by the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple are no longer enough to satisfy my appetite. I'll find another way. Although his tone was calm, there was a strong blood stench and killing intent. He did not hide his ambitions at all. At the conjoint body realm, his combat strength and methods would become even more terrifying. At that time, another bloodbath would definitely break out on Tianhuang mainland. The gaze of the white-robed man flickered as he channeled his spirit consciousness, causing the stone door on the east side of the ancient temple to rise slowly. At that moment, the sun had just risen. A warm ray of sunlight shone into the hall, purging away some of the sinister blood stench. Suzimo also regained some warmth. Immediately after, Suzimo felt a tremendous force pushing him out of the ancient temple. In the blink of an eye, he arrived outside the ancient temple. The white-robed man had truly let him off and even gave him the complete Mingwang prayer beads. Bang! Boom! Boom! The stone door descended slowly. Instinctively, Suzimo turned around and saw that the figure had already faded into the depths of the ancient temple and disappeared with the descent of the stone door. Right in front of Suzimo, the gigantic Grand Primordium Ancient Temple shrank into a fist-sized light spot in the blink of an eye and sped into the distance, disappearing at the end of the sky before long. It was over. Standing in midair, Suzimo breathed in the fresh air around him and recalled everything that happened in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. He still felt that everything was surreal and was in a daze. It was as though everything was just a dream. He glanced at his palm. The complete Mingwang prayer beads laid there silently with 6 Buddha beads strung together, emitting a sacred glow. Chapter 1273 Monk Daming. Chapter 1273, Monk Daming. Suzimo looked around. The Grand Primordium Ancient Temple carried everyone else and had long left Jade Toad Ridge. He took out some elixirs to recover his essence spirit from his storage bag and took a rest. Thereafter, he caught a random mystic mist eagle in the surrounding forest and used it as his leg strength to walk towards the bamboo forest where Yen Beichen was in seclusion. That way he could recuperate and recover his strength while traveling. The mystic mist eagle traveled through the clouds at an extremely fast speed. Suzimo sat on the back of the mystic mist eagle and recuperated while reminiscing about his bizarre experience. The trip to the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple this time round was a calamity for most cultivators. Of the 5,000-odd cultivators that entered, there would most likely be less than 10 that survived. However, for Suzimo, the tides turned and he obtained an unimaginable opportunity. Even now, he could not understand why Dao Lord Blood Fiend would suddenly change his mind and let him off, even returning the complete Mingwang prayer beads to him. The Mingwang prayer beads meant a lot to Suzimo. It was also an extremely significant boost to his combat strength. That was because the 2 lost Buddha beads contained the 2 strongest dermic seals of the Daming Dermic Seal, the Great Vajra Wheel Seal and Great Mount Meru Seal. According to Monk Yuan Bei, those 2 dermic seals were the toughest and strongest. Furthermore, an even stronger dermic art would be born if the 6 dermic seals were combined. Suzimo rubbed the Mingwang prayer beads gently and his heart skipped a beat as he recalled the way the white-robed man looked at it. The white-robed man's attitude towards him seemed to have shifted after he caught sight of the Mingwang prayer beads as well. What does Dao Lord Blood Fiend have to do with the Mingwang prayer beads? Suzimo muttered, Monk Daming should be the one related to the Mingwang prayer beads. All of a sudden, Suzimo's voice stopped abruptly. His eyes widened as he thought of an extremely terrifying and ridiculous possibility. Could it be that the white-robed man he saw was not Dao Lord Blood Fiend, but Monk Daming? That speculation was way too terrifying. However, now that Suzimo had recovered his energy, his thoughts were gradually clear. As he recalled everything that happened in the hall, he could not help but think in that direction. The white-robed man could cultivate 4 supreme Dharma characteristics of the Buddhist monasteries, the 4 guardian Vajras. Furthermore, the reason why his attainments in Buddhism were so terrifying might be because the white-robed man was monk Daming. Actually, there were many traces of the Buddhist monasteries on the body of the white-robed man. Su Zimo's immediate assumption of the white-robed man was that he was Tao Lord Blood Fiend because the latter knew the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. However, that did not mean that the white-robed man was Tao Lord Blood Fiend. After all, Su Zimo knew it as well. He had learned the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra not long after he was trapped in the stone coffin. It was normal for the white-robed man to learn the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra after being trapped in the stone coffin for 40,000 years. More importantly, Su Zimo recalled something. The white-robed man admitted that he had met Su Zimo once before. In fact, he had already admitted that he was the skeleton that revived in the underground Fiend Palace more than 100 years ago. However, right from the beginning, the white-robed man had never admitted that he was Tao Lord Blood Fiend. The white-robed man once said, "Fiends can become Buddhas and Buddhas can become fiends as well. There's no difference between the two." Now that he thought about it, that seemed like an inspired statement. That was the only explanation that made sense why the white-robed man's attitude changed all of a sudden upon hearing Su Zimo's identity as the successor of Daming Monastery. In fact, he even took out his 2 Buddha beads and returned the complete Mingwang prayer beads to Su Zimo. Even if monk Daming turned into a fiend, he possessed an inseverable connection towards Daming Monastery. For the past 100 years, the Grand Primordium ancient temple had appeared many times on Tianhuang mainland. However, it had never been to the north region. That was most likely an attempt to avoid Daming Monastery. However, what the white-robed man did not know was that Daming Monastery had already become a thing of the past. Furthermore, given the seniority of monk Daming, there was a high chance that he knew monk Yuan Bei. That might be the only old friend he knew. Could that be true? Su Zimo murmured with a lost expression. Even if he thought of that possibility, he was unwilling to believe it in the depths of his heart. Monk Daming, the titular disciple of Daming Monastery 40,000 years ago with a benevolent heart, had been relegated to his current state in order to suppress Tao Lord Blood Fiend and save the masses. Actually, Su Zimo already had an answer in his heart. That was because he had cultivated the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra before as well. To be precise, he had only cultivated a few Dharmic arts of the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Even so, he nearly fell into the Fiend Tao and became a bloodthirsty fiend. Each time he activated the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, he would develop a dependence on it. The feeling of being able to obtain endless power through bloodthirst was truly unbearable. Of course, deep in his heart, Su Zimo still believed that the white-robed man had not truly become a fiend like Tao Lord Blood Fiend. At the very least, there was a sense of nostalgia and longing for Daming Monastery in the heart of the white-robed man. Otherwise, the white-robed man would not have returned the complete Mingwang prayer beads to him or let him leave. Perhaps in the heart of the white-robed man, he felt that he was no longer worthy of carrying this Dharmic weapon of Daming Monastery, and that's why he gave it to Su Zimo. Of course, all of that was merely Su Zimo's speculation. There were still some questions that were difficult to explain. For example, if the white-robed man was monk Daming, why was he locked in that stone coffin? Who was the one who inscribed the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra in the stone coffin? Was everything done by Tao Lord Blood Fiend? What was Tao Lord Blood Fiend's motive for doing this? The most important question was whether Tao Lord Blood Fiend was still alive. Su Zimo could not help but recall the blood-colored human face that appeared in the Thousand-Year Blood Sea back in Thousand Demon Valley. Of course, there were still unresolved questions about the entire affair. If the white-robed man was monk Daming, it would mean that 40,000 years had passed for him. How could monk Daming not die after being trapped in the stone coffin for 40,000 years? Even if there was a Mingwang prayer bead in the stone coffin that was made from soul-nourishing wood and could nurture one's essence spirit, it could not extend the lifespan of a cultivator. There must be something else that Su Zimo had not considered. Unknowingly, an entire day had passed after he sorted out his thoughts. Coupled with superior-grade elixirs, the green lotus true body had mostly recovered. Go on. Rising, Su Zimo tapped the mystic mist eagle beneath him with his feet and gave it a few bottles of elixirs as well as a Dharmic weapon. After receiving its reward, the mystic mist eagle could not help but rear its head and cry, wiping away the indignance in its heart. Su Zimo smiled. No matter how fast the mystic mist eagle was, it could not match him. His figure transformed into a blazing golden streak of light and fled into the distance. Su Zimo wanted to return to the bamboo forest as soon as possible and hand the 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir to Yen Beichen. Chapter 1274, Ungrateful. Chapter 1274, Ungrateful. Middle Continent, Bamboo Forest, Wooden House. Pianran, you seem a little distracted these past few days. What's on your mind? Yen Beichen asked softly with a concerned expression. Qin Pianran frowned slightly with a hint of worry in her eyes. For some reason, I've been feeling uneasy recently. After pausing for a moment, she revealed a smile and pretended to be relaxed. Beichen, you don't have to worry. It's nothing much. It should be fine after a couple of days. Uneasy. However, Yen Beichen had a grim expression as he shook his head. That's an impulse. Given your cultivation, there won't be such a sign for no reason. That doesn't make sense. I've already faked my death to escape and even returned the Asura Saber. How can there be any danger? Furthermore, even if there's danger, it'll be difficult to find this place. Yen Beichen fell into deep thought and his gaze inadvertently landed on Qin Pianran. His heart skipped a beat. What's wrong? Qin Pianran asked. Yen Beichen was once the titular disciple of Asura sect and had seen too many bloodshed and scheming people. At that moment he already had a guess. There were only 2 possibilities if the 2 of them were exposed. Someone had either followed his tracks or leads about Qin Pianran. He did not leave any destiny symbols in Asura sect. However, it was different for Qin Pianran. Let's leave this place first. Yen Beichen was decisive and stood up, grabbing Qin Pianran's hand and heading outside. Qin Pianran did not ask further either. The 2 of them had long decided to be with one another for life. She believed in Yen Beichen and would follow him wherever he went. Yen Beichen had just brought Qin Pianran out of the wooden house when he paused with a terrible expression. Not far ahead, a figure in white robes with a long sword on his back stood like an unsheathed sword with sharp brows and eyes. However, that figure seemed to be one with the world. Senior brother. Qin Pianran also saw that person and exclaimed in shock. The white-robed sword cultivator was none other than the titular disciple of Sword Sect, Dao Lord Immortal Sword. Or rather, Immortal Sword was no longer a titular disciple of Sword Sect. That was because the aura he emanated had clearly surpassed the Dharma characteristic realm. He was at the conjoint body realm and had become a mighty figure. For some people, the immense setbacks they suffered could cause them to die and fade into the masses. However, there were some people who could temper themselves continuously through setbacks to make their swords sharper and stronger. Immortal Sword was clearly the latter. Back in Thousand Demon Valley, he had failed in the fight for the heaven-slaying sword art. Thereafter, in 100 Refinement Sect, he was defeated by the extreme fire and was suppressed domineeringly. Even his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was shattered. Later on, outside 100 Refinement Sect, he was hunted by Yen Beichen who had just entered the Dharma characteristic realm and almost died. Eventually, he managed to escape with the help of Qin Pianran. Even the consecutive setbacks could not crush him. Instead, he cultivated wholeheartedly all these years and had already entered the conjoint body realm. Yen Beichen's expression was terrible. Even if he was in his peak condition, there was no way he could be a match for Immortal Sword who was at the conjoint body realm, let alone the fact that his essence spirit was severely injured. Piak, piak, piak. A series of clapping sounds could be heard from the other side of the bamboo forest. Yen Beichen swept his gaze and his heart sank. Tisk tsk tsk. There's no wonder why he's the Asura. Even after his essence spirit is injured, he's able to sense danger beforehand. The intruder sighed and shook his head. Unfortunately, it's too late. The intruder was the titular disciple of Cloud Rain sect, Dao Lord Cloud Rain. Back when Yen Beichen attacked Dao Lord Immortal Sword and the other 8 Dao Lords, apart from Qin Pianran, only Dao Lord Immortal Sword and Dao Lord Cloud Rain managed to escape. How could the 2 titular disciples let things go after suffering such humiliation? Right now, the 4 of them in that battle were all here. However, Qin Pianran was now by Yen Beichen's side. Immortal Sword's gaze landed on Yen Beichen and Qin Pianran's clenched fists. With a dark expression he said slowly, "Asura, aren't you dead? You seem to be living well." Immortal Sword Cloud Rain. There's nothing much to say now that things have come to this. Against Dao Lord hatred, Yen Beichen even tried to beg the other party to let him off. However, against Immortal Sword he knew that he would only humiliate himself. Back then I was the one who tried to kill you guys. It has nothing to do with her. Yen Beichen released Qin Pianran's hand. All these years she was also captured by me and can't leave. It's not her fault. Beichen. Qin Pianran's heart ached. She could tell that Yen Beichen only said that to protect her because he knew he was going to die. Beichen. That sure is endearing. Dao Lord Cloud Rain waved his folding fan and said eccentrically. His gaze swept across Qin Pianran brazenly. Dao brother Immortal Sword, given my experience this woman is no longer a virgin. Sigh. A layer of frost had already covered Immortal Sword's face. Although he had no feelings for Qin Pianran, there was no way he could tolerate this woman throwing herself into someone else's embrace. When he heard Dao Lord Cloud Rain say that, he felt even more humiliated. Senior brother, I already left the cultivation world with Beichen. We won't have anything to do with it anymore. Qin Pianran begged bitterly, Senior brother, please show mercy and let us off. Shut up. Immortal Sword had a menacing expression as he hollered, how dare you speak to me like that, lowlife? How dare you call me senior brother? Qin Pianran's face turned pale at the mention of lowlife. No matter what, she and Immortal Sword were from the same sect and could be considered as childhood sweethearts. In fact, they were the envy of everyone in Sword Sect. In exchange for that friendship of thousands of years, she was given that vicious insult. A look of rage surged into Yen Beichen's eyes as well as he shouted, Immortal Sword, are you worthy of being a titular disciple of Sword Sect? Back then Pianran saved you in 100 Refinement Sect. Outside 100 Refinement Sect, if she had not attacked, you would have been killed by me. Anyone in this world can curse Pianran, but you're the only one who isn't qualified. Immortal Sword sneered, do you think you can kill me? Even without that lowlife I could have left unscathed. This time round, Dao Lord Cloud Rain did not say anything. At that time he was on the battlefield and naturally saw everything clearly. If not for Qin Pianran, Immortal Sword would have been a dead man. Dao Lord Cloud Rain curled his lips and sneered internally, Immortal sects and orthodox sects? Even those of the Fiend sects can't match up to someone as ungrateful as him. Now that he was on the same side as Immortal Sword, there was naturally no way he would say something like that. To think that once upon a time I was ranked alongside someone like you as the Asura. That sure disgusts me. Yen Beichen spat. You're no longer qualified of being ranked alongside me. Immortal Sword said coldly, because dead people are not qualified. Chapter 1275 Trampling. Chapter 1275, Trampling. Pianran, try your best to escape. Yen Beichen sent a voice transmission secretly, I'm the one they want to kill. I'll hold them back. As long as you escape and find Zimo, he'll naturally take revenge for me. Trying to escape. Suddenly, the voice of Immortal Sword sounded with a hint of mockery. Since I found this place, I won't give you any chances. He smiled indifferently and waved his hand. Elder Qin, come out. This lowlife has betrayed Sword Sect and is now with the greatest fiend of the fiend sections. I'll hand her over to you. Sigh. A sigh sounded from the bamboo forest. A middle-aged woman with a long sword on her back walked out and looked at Qin Pianran with a conflicted expression, shaking her head. Pianran, why were you so foolish? Why? Another conjoint body mighty figure. Yen Beichen's heart sank. He knew that the chances of them leaving this place alive were extremely slim. Master. Qin Pianran was shocked when she saw that person and could not help but exclaim. She could betray Sword Sect and even attack Immortal Sword, but she could not attack Elder Qin. She was an orphan child abandoned in the chaos of war. Elder Qin was the one who saved her and raised her, taking her in as a disciple. Her surname was the same as Elder Qin. Elder Qin was Qin Pianran's master. However, in her heart, Elder Qin was more like her mother. All these years, she and Yen Beichen lived in seclusion here without any news. The person she felt most guilty towards was Elder Qin. Qin Pianran had not expected that Immortal Sword would bring Elder Qin over. Pianran, I heard from Immortal Sword that you've already betrayed the sect and are with the Asura of the Fiend sections. Initially I did not believe it. But now. She did not continue and sighed again. Master. Qin Pianran sounded like she was about to cry as well. Elder Qin could not help but ask, Pianran, have you suffered all these years? If you've suffered, tell me. I'll definitely take revenge for you and kill this fiend Asura personally. No, I've been very happy all these years. Qin Pianran shook her head. Elder Qin wanted to speak but hesitated. There was no way Qin Pianran could not tell what Elder Qin was implying. Elder Qin was reminding Qin Pianran that if she were to berate the Asura Yen Beichen, and leave him now, Elder Qin could conveniently use that as an excuse to protect her. However, how could Qin Pianran say those words? Immortal Sword frowned when he heard that and could not help but urge, Elder Qin, are you doing this for personal gain? Betraying the sect and being involved with a fiend is an unforgivable crime punishable by death. You had better hurry and execute the sect rules. Elder Qin's expression changed, and after a long silence she drew the sword on her back slowly and said resolutely, Pianran, attack. Let me see how much you've grown over the years. Qin Pianran merely shook her head and wept. Master, I won't attack you no matter what. I won't spare you even if you won't attack. Elder Qin hollered and waved her sword, sending waves of sword chi towards Qin Pianran. Just as Yen Beichen was about to move, Immortal Sword and Dao Lord Cloud Rain moved and formed a triangular formation, trapping him in the middle. Asura, what goes around comes around. Immortal Sword smiled gently with a smug expression. More than 10 years ago, his reputation in the cultivation world plummeted after that crushing defeat. All these years, he had endured humiliation for this very moment. Power has landed in the hands of someone vile. Yen Beichen said coldly, it was truly my mistake not to kill you back then. Since that's the case, I'll give you another chance. Immortal Sword smiled. Let's have another life and death battle of only you and me, how about that? On the surface, this was an opportunity. However, Yen Beichen was at the Dharma characteristic realm and his essence spirit was severely injured. Even his Asura Saber was returned to Asura sect. However, Immortal Sword was already a conjoint body mighty figure. There was no doubt about the outcome of that battle. Dao Lord Cloud Rain spread his hands. Since that's the case, I'll just sit by the sidelines and watch the show. Yen Beichen remained silent. His gaze swept across the battlefield at the side. Elder Qin attacked continuously. Qin Pianran was dodging the entire time and refused to attack. However, under Elder Qin's attacks, Qin Pianran's space to dodge decreased by the moment. Bang! All of a sudden, Yen Beichen experienced a severe injury to his chest. Before he could react, he was already sent flying and rolled dozens of feet away, smashing into a row of bamboo. Dao Lord Immortal Sword had suddenly struck Yen Beichen on the chest. How dare you get distracted in front of me? Are you looking down on me? Immortal Sword walked slowly towards Yen Beichen with a mocking expression and sneered. Given his current cultivation realm, it was way too simple if he wanted to kill Yen Beichen. A single punch from him could pierce Yen Beichen's chest. However, he did not do that. Killing Yen Beichen with a single punch was truly not enjoyable for Immortal Sword. He wanted to torture Yen Beichen bit by bit. That way he could make up for the criticism he suffered over the years and vent the resentment in his heart. Ah! Qin Pianran was shocked when she saw Yen Beichen beaten down. While she was distracted, a wound appeared on her body and she could not help but exclaim. When Yen Beichen saw that Qin Pianran was injured, his eyes seemed to spew out two streams of rage. He struggled to stand up and wanted to help her. However, the moment he stood up, Dao Lord Immortal Sword had already arrived before him and raised his leg gently, striking him in the chest. That kick was neither heavy nor light. However, Yen Beichen could not withstand it. The pain in his heart was unbearable and he could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Does it feel terrible? Are you feeling flustered? Ha 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 ha. Immortal Sword laughed brazenly. The feeling of trampling on Yen Beichen ruthlessly and wantonly made him feel delighted. All his grievances over the years had been relieved. Right now, even the renowned Asura had to kneel before him. Immortal Sword wanted Yen Beichen to watch Qin Pianran die in front of him while he was helpless. Bang! Yen Beichen tried to stand up but was sent flying by Immortal Sword once more. Cough! He coughed out large mouthfuls of blood and lowered his head, seemingly unable to resist. Dao Lord Immortal Sword arrived before Yen Beichen once more and looked down at him with a relaxed expression. All of a sudden, a saber appeared in Yen Beichen's hands. Kill? Yen Beichen leaped up and let out a deep growl from the depths of his throat. With a backhand slash, he slashed towards Immortal Sword's throat. That was a killing move from the Asura Saber. The two of them were extremely close, and Yen Beichen endured for a long time because he wanted to make use of the moment when Immortal Sword relaxed his mind to retaliate. This was his only chance. If the two of them were to fight head-on, he could not win at all. The saber was already at Immortal Sword's throat. However, Immortal Sword did not move at all, as though he could not react to it to dodge in time. Clang. When the saber slashed Dao Lord Immortal Sword's throat, there was a sound of metal clashing. Yen Beichen's eyes dimmed. Dao Lord Immortal Sword smirked and extended his finger gently, clamping the saber beneath his throat as he said indifferently, "You want to hurt me with this piece of scrap metal?" The moment he said that, the saber broke. Chapter 1276 Bold Claims. Chapter 1276 Bold Claims. At the conjoint body realm, Immortal Sword had already fused his 89 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristic into his body and tempered his body with the lifeless sword chi. His flesh was indestructible. The saber in Yen Beichen's hands was only a Dao Lord Dharmic weapon. Compared to the sharpness of the Asura saber, it was way too inferior and could not injure Immortal Sword. Immortal Sword reached out with his palm and grabbed Yen Beichen by the throat, lifting him from the spot. Under the palm of Immortal Sword, Yen Beichen's throat made a jarring sound, as though it could be crushed at any moment. Yen Beichen's face flushed red and he could no longer resist. He was in complete despair. He struggled and turned his face with a trembling expression, trying his best to look in Qin Pianran's direction. Although his vision was blurry, his eyes were still filled with endless worry and reluctance. Feeling terrible and helpless, right? When Immortal Sword saw Yen Beichen like this, he could not help but laugh. However, his tone was extremely sinister. "All these years I've been waiting for this day. I'm going to make you pay double the humiliation and pain I've suffered." Yen Beichen's mouth twitched as though he was smiling. "What are you laughing at?" Immortal Sword truly could not imagine that Yen Beichen could still smile despite his current state. "Even if I die, why you won't survive either." Yen Beichen's voice was as soft as a mosquito and intermittent. However, Immortal Sword heard it clearly. "Oh." Immortal Sword sneered, "You Yen Beichen are a dead man to begin with. Who would care if I killed a dead man? Your essence spirit is severely injured and you're no longer worthy of the title of the Asura. Would Asura sect take revenge for you? What a joke. On the other hand, I've already advanced to the conjoint body realm. Who would dare to be my enemy?" Yen Beichen's lips twitched once more. His eyes were completely crimson as blood gushed into them, but they shone with mockery. "Oh, got it." Immortal Sword came to a realization. "You're counting on Desolate Marshal, right? Back then, for Desolate Marshal, you dared to come and hunt us the moment you entered the Dharma characteristic realm. The two of you truly have an extraordinary relationship. However, I can tell you that even if Desolate Marshal doesn't come looking for me, I'll look for him. I'm going to make him spit out the heaven-slaying sword art for snatching it away from me." That was indeed Immortal Sword's intention. The first people he wanted to get rid of after coming out of seclusion were Yen Beichen and Qin Pianran. Thereafter he was going to deal with Su Zimo. Immortal Sword said proudly, "I'm going to tell the entire cultivation world that my pride is not to be trifled with. Anyone who dares go against me will be killed without mercy." His words were filled with endless killing intent that spread through the entire bamboo forest. At that moment, countless birds and beasts in the bamboo forest died. A mighty figure could possess such might with just the killing intent in his words. What a bold claim. Right then, a loud roar sounded from the distant horizon. Everyone's expressions changed. Who would dare provoke Immortal Sword like that? Dao Lord Cloud Rain was once ranked alongside Immortal Sword and was a titular disciple as well. However, after Immortal Sword entered the conjoint body realm, he tactfully accepted a lesser status and gave Immortal Sword respect as well. Dao Lord Cloud Rain looked over. The intruder was extremely fast. When he said the first word, he was still far away in the horizon and could not be seen. However, by the time he said the last word, a figure had already appeared in Dao Lord Cloud Rain's line of sight. Green robes and black hair. He flew through the air and transformed into a golden streak of light. His body surged with the power of thunder and released an extremely terrifying aura. The intruder was none other than Su Zimo, who had rushed back from the Grand Primordium ancient temple. Desolate Marshal. Dao Lord Cloud Rain recognized Su Zimo right away and his eyes shone brightly. "Ha ha ha ha." Immortal Sword reared his head in laughter. "Everyone's here. Desolate Marshal, you came at the right time. This will save me the trouble of looking for you personally. When Yen Beichen heard Su Zimo's voice, there was no joy in his heart. Instead he was filled with worry. He believed that one day Su Zimo would be able to surpass Immortal Sword and trample on the ladder to take revenge for him. However, now was not the time. Immortal Sword had already entered the conjoint body realm. However, Su Zimo was only at the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm. Even if he had 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics, he might not be a match for Immortal Sword. Furthermore, Immortal Sword was not the only one here. There was also another conjoint body mighty figure of Sword Sect and Dao Lord Cloud Rain. It would be difficult for Su Zimo to secure victory if he wanted to take on 3 of them single-handedly. Immortal Sword released his grip and threw Yen Beichen beneath his feet, laughing coldly. Yen Beichen, weren't you hoping that Desolate Marshal would take revenge for you? I'll let you see with your own eyes how Desolate Marshal dies in my hands. Immortal Sword's hatred for Yen Beichen surpassed everyone. He wanted Yen Beichen to endure all the pain possible. He wanted Yen Beichen to personally experience the loss of those around him one after another while being completely helpless. Dao brother Immortal Sword, there's no need to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Leave this lad to me. Dao Lord Cloud Rain stood out and took the initiative to volunteer. I have some grudges with Desolate Marshal as well. Back then, if not for this person, my clone would not have died in Thousand Demon Valley. Alright. Immortal Sword nodded and said with a fake smile, however, you can't keep that lad's treasures for yourself. Dao Lord Cloud Rain's heart turned cold. Although Immortal Sword sounded like he was joking, he could tell that Immortal Sword was warning him not to harbor any designs. The longer he interacted with Immortal Sword, the more Dao Lord Cloud Rain could sense that the latter was an extremely selfish person and cared nothing about relationships. That was the reason why, although Dao Lord Cloud Rain had been very close to Immortal Sword all these years, he had always kept his guard up in the depths of his heart. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had already arrived before him. Desolate Marshal, I heard that you can kill conjoint body mighty figures across major cultivation realms by condensing 2 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. Let's see how strong a mid-stage Dharma characteristic like you can be. Dao Lord Cloud Rain welcomed Su Zimo fearlessly. He was a titular disciple. As titular disciples, which of them did not possess the combat strength to kill an opponent a major cultivation realm above them? For the past thousands of years, countless conjoint body mighty figures had died in his hands. Dao Lord Cloud Rain had been famous for a long time and was the second on the Dharma characteristic ranking 5,000 years ago. How long had Su Zimo been in the Dharma characteristic realm for? At most, it was less than 20 years ago. Therefore, Dao Lord Cloud Rain truly did not take Su Zimo seriously. In his opinion, the so-called 2 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were merely empty shells. Even a Dharmic art released by him could penetrate Su Zimo's 2 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. 7 emotions threads. Dao Lord Cloud Rain conjured hand seals and looked at Su Zimo. All of a sudden, one after another, extremely sharp and colorful threads appeared around Su Zimo. The 7 emotions threads was the ultimate skill of Cloud Rain sect. Be it cultivators or fiend demons, all of them had the 7 emotions and 6 desires. This technique made use of the 7 emotions produced in all living beings. The 7 emotions of joy, anger, worry, longing, sadness, fear and shock condensed into threads that burst forth from the cultivator's body and spread rapidly. As long as one had the 7 emotions, they would be controlled by the 7 emotions threads. Back in Thousand Demon Valley, there were countless high-level fiend demons that died to the 7 emotions threads. Chapter 1277, Great Vajra Wheel Seal. Chapter 1277, Great Vajra Wheel Seal. Back in Thousand Demon Valley, it was merely a clone of Dao Lord Cloud Rain. Right now, Dao Lord Cloud Rain's true body was the one who released the 7 emotions threads. At that moment, the 7 emotions threads were even more powerful and sinister, impossible to defend against. The moment Su Zimo charged forward, colorful threads appeared on the surface of his body one after another. Furthermore, they increased in number and were impossible to cut through, tightening endlessly as they tried to slice his green lotus true body. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. Among the 7 emotions of joy, anger, worry, longing, sadness, fear and shock, the anger on his body was the most obvious. Those threads were also derived from the 7 emotions. It was difficult to face that Dharmic art head-on. That was because every single 7 emotions threads was derived from Su Zimo's own strength. The 7 emotions threads could only be resolved through other methods. All of a sudden, Su Zimo chanted an abstruse sutra in Sanskrit. As he chanted the sutra, the 7 emotions threads on Su Zimo decreased and were dissolving at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was an incantation of the Buddhist sect's, the heart-calming mantra. The 7 emotions were born from the heart. With a calm heart and clear mind, the 7 emotions would naturally dissipate. At that moment, the anger in Su Zimo's heart seemed to have vanished into thin air. A single Buddhist incantation was all it took to dispel Cloud Rain sect's ultimate technique. Right from the beginning, Su Zimo's footsteps had not paused at all. All right. Dao Lord Cloud Rain was not surprised as well and slapped in reverse against Su Zimo through the void. Endless dermic powers gathered in Dao Lord Cloud Rain's palm. A gigantic hand seal appeared in the void. Dao Lord Cloud Rain slapped 6 times in succession. 6 gigantic hand seals appeared. 6 desires palm strike form. As Dao Lord Cloud Rain roared, the 6 gigantic hand seals fused rapidly, forming an extremely terrifying dermic power hand seal that crushed down with a terrifying might. The strength of the 7 emotions threads was how treacherous they were. However, the 6 desires palm strike was the most lethal dermic art of Cloud Rain sect. Ma. Su Zimo's gaze burned brightly as he chanted Sanskrit. The 5th of the 6 words of the Daming mantra was released. The entire void trembled. The 6 desires palm strike paused momentarily against the sound domain secret skill of the Daming mantra as well. Su Zimo closed his fingers and curved them, forming a hand seal that seemed like a fist, a palm and a roulette. It was the 5th of the Daming dermic seals, the Great Vajra Wheel seal. Among the Daming dermic seals, the final 2 Great Vajra Wheel and Great Mount Meru seals were the most ferocious and unstoppable. Su Zimo had cultivated the Daming True Sutra to begin with and was wearing the Mingwang prayer beads all year round. As such, the remaining 2 dermic seals required less effort to cultivate. He had already comprehended something along the way here. Boom. As Su Zimo released the dermic seal, a gigantic golden palm appeared in midair. Its 5 fingers were closed and bent, resembling a gigantic golden wheel that shone with a blinding light. The Vajra wheel carried endless might and was incomparably divine as it smashed towards the 6 desires palm strike. Boom. A deafening noise echoed. Immediately after, Dao Lord Cloud Rain's expression changed. Right in front of him, cracks appeared on the surface of the 6 desires palm strike and spread continuously, covering everything densely in the blink of an eye. Impossible. Dao Lord Cloud Rain was shocked. He had been in the Dharma characteristic realm for so many years, but his dermic powers were no match for a mid-stage Dharma characteristic. Crack, crack, crack. In midair, the Vajra wheel did not stop at all and continued rolling forward, crushing the 6 desires palm strike completely. Bang, boom, boom. The remnant might of the 6 desires palm seal did not stop and continued crushing in the direction of Dao Lord Cloud Rain, as though it wanted to grind him into dust. Bang. Dao Lord Cloud Rain had a grim expression as a loud bang sounded from his body. A phantom appeared above his head and rose rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it was already 88 feet tall. A heaven and earth Dharma characteristic. Under the pressure of the Great Vajra Wheel seal, Dao Lord Cloud Rain had no choice but to condense his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic. The heaven and earth Dharma characteristic waved its hand and punched, dispersing the Great Vajra Wheel seal. After the Great Vajra Wheel seal crushed the 6 desires palm strike, it naturally did not have much dermic powers left and could not defend against Dao Lord Cloud Rain's heaven and earth Dharma characteristic. Su Zimo was expressionless. Boom. A phantom appeared within his body as well. An 87 feet tall heavenly fiend Dharma body that was shrouded in pitch-black fiend chi and was clad in black armor descended upon the world with a pitch-black scythe in its hands. Roar. 2 pitch-black beams of light burst forth from the eyes of the heavenly fiend Dharma body. When it saw the heaven and earth Dharma characteristic opposite it, it roared. Swoosh. The heavenly fiend Dharma body strode forward and swung the heavenly fiend scythe in its hands towards Dao Lord Cloud Rain's heaven and earth Dharma characteristic. Kill. Dao Lord Cloud Rain hollered and controlled his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic to charge forward as well. His heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was 88 feet tall and was even taller than the heavenly fiend Dharma body by a foot. The 2 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics collided violently. Instantly the weather changed and dust billowed. All of a sudden, Dao Lord Cloud Rain's expression changed starkly. His heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was actually disadvantaged in the clash between the two heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. How was that possible? A look of disbelief flashed through Dao Lord Cloud Rain's eyes. Su Zimo's heavenly Fiend Dharma body was one of the strongest Dharma bodies of the Fiend sects to begin with. Cloud Rain's sect did not specialize in head-on combat. The legacy Dharma characteristic of Cloud Rain's sect was also ranked last in the Fiend sections. Furthermore, the heavenly Fiend Dharma body was created with the Dao Heart Fiend Seed Sutra as its foundation, and it was fused with many of the secret skills of the Fiend sects. It was a grand product produced from the fusion of the cultivation techniques of the Fiend sects. Even if Dao Lord Cloud Rain's heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was a foot taller, it was not a match for the heavenly Fiend Dharma body. Before Dao Lord Cloud Rain could understand what was happening, the situation on the battlefield changed. An arm of his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was severed by the heavenly Fiend scythe and its dharmic powers drained rapidly. Its strength was greatly reduced. Ah! Dao Lord Cloud Rain exclaimed and controlled his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic to retreat rapidly with a thought, shouting for help. Dao Brother Immortal Sword, Desolate Martial is too strong. You have to attack him personally. In truth, Dao Lord Cloud Rain was scheming at the moment as well. Given his combat strength, he could still continue to contend with Su Zimo for a little while. However, that would consume too much of his energy and he might even fall into danger and die. Since Su Zimo was so troublesome to deal with, he could not care less about his dignity. He made a prompt decision and wanted Immortal Sword and Su Zimo to fight so that he could stand by and watch. Immortal Sword sneered and leaped into midair. He glared at the incoming heavenly Fiend Dharma body and shouted, "A mere heaven and earth Dharma characteristic that won't be able to resist a single blow." Break. Clang. Immortal Sword's movements could not even be seen at all. Accompanied by the sound of a sword being unsheathed, a blinding sword beam descended and slashed towards the heavenly Fiend Dharma body. Before the sword beam descended, a clear crack appeared on the chest of the heavenly Fiend Dharma body. The might of a single slash was so terrifying. Chapter 1278, Massive Explosion. Chapter 1278, Massive Explosion. Immortal Sword was the number one of the previous Dharma characteristic ranking. His heaven and earth Dharma characteristic condensed into a height of 89 feet and was extremely close to a supreme Dharma characteristic. The so-called conjoint body was to fuse heaven and earth Dharma characteristics with one's body. In other words, the stronger the heaven and earth Dharma characteristic, the more terrifying the body of the conjoint body realm. That was the reason why Yen Beichen's saber could not cut through the throat of Immortal Sword. After entering the conjoint body realm, Immortal Sword's combat strength increased exponentially and his sword chi was immensely sharp. The moment he attacked, his sword beam nearly tore the heavenly Fiend Dharma body apart. In the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, Su Zimo's heaven and earth Dharma characteristic could even take on conjoint body mighty figures of super sections. But now, it could not defend against a single sword beam from Immortal Sword. Su Zimo was expressionless. If a single heaven and earth Dharma characteristic could not defend against it, he would use two. If two were not enough, he would use three. Bang. Bang. With a single thought from Su Zimo, two phantoms suddenly appeared within his body and rose rapidly. In the blink of an eye, they had already grown into indomitable titans. One of them was surrounded by endless electric arcs and wielded a dazzling thunder whip. Dark clouds gathered above its head and it seemed like a divine being that controlled thunder. Its might was terrifying and its aura was shocking. The other figure was dressed in monk robes and had a dignified expression with a lowered head. Wearing a layer of golden light, it was divine and flawless as a halo spread out behind it in a domineering manner. The thunder dermic body and Rulai dermic body descended at the same time. Su Zimo did not hold back at all and his three dermic bodies descended at the same time. When he saw that, Dao Lord Cloud Rain's expression changed starkly as disbelief filled his eyes. Prior to this, the cultivation world only knew that Desolate Martial had formed two heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. Apart from the cultivators who died in the Dao inheritance ground, not many people knew that Su Zimo had three heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. Furthermore, the three heaven and earth Dharma characteristics had already grown to a height of 87 feet. How unbelievable was that? Dao Lord Cloud Rain felt a sense of relief. Thankfully, he noticed that the situation was bad and made a prompt decision to retreat first so that Immortal Sword could take over. If he had retreated slightly slower earlier on, he would have been crushed into dust by a single move from the 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. Even Immortal Sword was shocked and his pupils constricted, let alone Dao Lord Cloud Rain. Piak. In a flash, the whip in the hands of the thunderdermic body struck the sword beam in midair first. Instantly the sword beam dimmed significantly. Clang. Immediately after, the heavenly fiend's scythe collided with the sword beam and sparks flew in an ear-piercing manner. The sharpness of the sword beam decreased significantly. Bang. The Rulai-dermic body extended a golden palm and pushed down gently, turning the sword beam into nothingness and dissipating. 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics descended at the same time and blocked the sword beam of the conjoint body Immortal Sword. Good, good, good. Immortal Sword nodded repeatedly. Let's see how many of my strikes your 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics can withstand. Lifeless Sword Art / The moment he said that, Immortal Sword conjured a sword art and slashed forward with his right hand. The sword tore through the air and its sharpness seemed to rip the void into 2. It was like a bolt of lightning streaking through the night sky in a bedazzling manner. The moment the sword descended, all life in the void was sucked dry. A single strike from the lifeless sword art could sever all life. Bang, bang, bang. The 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics moved at the same time and attacked. Instantly, the battlefield in midair was filled with endless lightning, Sanskrit, golden light, fiend chi and sword chi. Even the void was trembling. The more Immortal Sword fought, the more alarmed he became. Although he had the upper hand, it was impossible for him to shatter Su Zimo's 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics in a short period of time. He had already entered the conjoint body realm. Even so, he was in a stalemate against Su Zimo. If Su Zimo were to cultivate to the late-stage Dharma characteristic realm, perfected Dharma characteristic realm and his heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were to grow further, how powerful would he be? At that thought, the killing intent in Immortal Sword's heart intensified. Immortal Sword's essence spirit was already channeled to its limits. He utilized sword escape and transformed into a sword beam. His body was fused flawless with his sword in heaven and earth. Extinguish, extinguish, extinguish. Immortal Sword struck 3 times in succession. All the living beings in the world felt a sense of danger when the 3 swords slashed down. Even Dao Lord Cloud Rain, who was outside the battlefield, felt his life force drain away. Immortal Sword Dao was immensely terrifying. The 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were already showing signs of dispersing. Immortal Sword hollered, "Desolate Marshal, how dare you fight with me for the heaven-slaying sword art? You have a death wish and even immortals can't save you. Since you want the heaven-slaying sword art so badly, I'll let you have your fill of it." Su Zimo's gaze intensified as he closed 2 fingers together to form a sword art. He slashed in the direction of Immortal Sword and released hundreds of sword chi in succession. Tiske, tiske, tsk. A single heaven-slaying sword chi could kill ordinary conjoint body mighty figures. What sort of a scene would it be if hundreds of heaven-slaying sword chi were released at the same time? Densely packed, they tore through the world. It was absolutely devastating. At the Void Reversion Realm, a single heaven-slaying sword chi took an immense toll on Su Zimo. But now that he had entered the Dharma characteristic realm, the power of his essence spirit was enough for him to release hundreds of heaven-slaying sword chi. Su Zimo was truly enraged when he saw Immortal Sword target Yen Beichen. The feud between Yen Beichen and Immortal Sword and the others was all because of him. He did not dare to imagine what would have happened if he had returned a step slower. To Su Zimo, Yen Beichen had the same status as Su Hong. Now that Su Hong was dead, he would definitely not allow anything to happen to Yen Beichen. Immortal Sword wanted to kill Su Zimo. As for Su Zimo, he had no intention of letting Immortal Sword leave as well. Therefore he released his full strength with that attack and his essence spirit was almost exhausted. You. Immortal Sword was shocked. No matter how strong the lifeless sword art was, it was deduced from the earth-slaying sword art. Naturally, its power could not compare to the earth-slaying sword art or the heaven-slaying sword art. Right now, hundreds of heaven-slaying sword chi descended at the 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics struck at the same time. They collided with the lifeless sword art with a loud bang. Countless sword chi splattered. The 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were riddled with holes and could disperse at any moment. It was even worse for Immortal Sword as his robes were instantly torn. Streaks of blood appeared on his body. His lifeless sword Dao dissipated instantly against the combined attack of Su Zimo's hundreds of heaven-slaying sword chi and 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. Immortal sword was filled with injuries from head to toe. Even a conjoined body could not withstand the sharpness of the sword chi. Of course, after entering the conjoined body realm, his body was filled with vitality, and in the blink of an eye, the wounds on Immortal sword healed and he stopped bleeding. However, a hint of cautiousness flashed through the depths of Immortal sword's eyes. It was way too scary. In that instant, he felt a sense of trepidation that he had not felt in a long time. Suddenly, Immortal sword harbored the intention of retreating when he caught sight of Su Zimo, who was charging over murderously. He could not figure out Su Zimo's actual strength. If Su Zimo were to release another similar attack, he would have to die here as well. Chapter 1279, Death of a Beauty. Chapter 1279, Death of a Beauty. The commotion caused by that attack shocked the two people on the other side of the battlefield. Elder Qin stopped her attacks and glanced over before retracting her gaze to look at Qin Pianran with a conflicted expression. Qin Pianran had not retaliated the entire time. In reality, Elder Qin had not attacked with her full strength. She was a conjoined body mighty figure. Given her cultivation, if she wanted to kill Qin Pianran, who was at the Dharma characteristic realm, with all her might, the latter would definitely not be able to last more than 10 breaths. Qin Pianran regarded her as a kin, and it was the same for her. No matter what, she had watched Qin Pianran grow up bit by bit. No one could compare to her feelings for the latter. Even if Qin Pianran committed a grave mistake, she was nothing but a child in her eyes. Master. Qin Pianran understood Elder Qin's feelings for her and could not help but exclaim softly as tears flowed down again. The situation on the battlefield had changed starkly. It merely took a single thought for Immortal sword to retreat. Suddenly he shouted, "Cloud Rain, I'll hold Desolate Marshal back. Kill the Asura quickly and don't let anything else happen." Dao Lord Cloud Rain had just retreated and was beside Yen Beichen. Immortal sword's words were extremely sudden, and Dao Lord Cloud Rain felt that something was amiss. However, he could not figure it out within a short period of time either. He merely felt that it was nothing much, since Yen Beichen was right beside him and could be killed with ease. Given Yen Beichen's current condition, he was already a cripple and there wouldn't be any accidents. At that thought, Dao Lord Cloud Rain extended his folding fan and tapped Yen Beichen's head fiercely. That attack was enough to pierce Yen Beichen's head. "How dare you!" Right then, Dao Lord Cloud Rain heard a ferocious beast roar in his ears. It was like a thunderclap that caused his ears to sting and his mind to buzz. Immediately after, he felt an incomparably tragic aura surge over with endless killing intent and rage. Instinctively, Dao Lord Cloud Rain looked over and saw that Su Zimo had already changed directions. Abandoning his pursuit of Immortal sword, Su Zimo transformed into a golden streak of light and arrived before him. On the other side, Immortal sword had already turned and fled into the distance. Suddenly, Dao Lord Cloud Rain understood. All these years he had been guarding against Immortal sword at all times. To think that he would still fall into Immortal sword's trap in the end. The reason why Immortal sword wanted Dao Lord Cloud Rain to kill the Asura was so that Su Zimo would be lured away for him to escape. Immortal sword knew very well. In Su Zimo's heart, Yen Beichen was more important. Therefore, when he asked Dao Lord Cloud Rain to kill Yen Beichen, Su Zimo would definitely save Yen Beichen right away. That way he would have enough time and space to escape from this place. Of course, it would mean that Dao Lord Cloud Rain would most likely be doomed. However, that meant nothing to him. As long as he could leave this place alive, everyone in the world could die. By the time Dao Lord Cloud Rain understood, it was already too late. That was because Su Zimo had already arrived before him. In reality, given Su Zimo's intelligence, he understood Immortal sword's scheme instantly. However, he had no other choice. Although killing Immortal sword was important, it could not compare to Yen Beichen's life. Furthermore, in Su Zimo's opinion, he could catch up with Immortal sword even if the latter escaped first. Boom. Dao Lord Cloud Rain controlled his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic and charged towards Su Zimo. Behind Su Zimo, 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics charged over as well. Although the 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were already riddled with holes, they were not something that a single 88 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristic could defend against. The 4 Dharma characteristics collided with a loud bang. Dao Lord Cloud Rain shuddered and staggered in retreat. His face was pale as he said hurriedly, "Please calm down, Dao Lord Desolate Marshal. I had no intention of harming the Asura at all. It's all Immortal Sword. He wants to make use of me to kill. You're the one I'm going to kill." Zemo did not waste his breath on him, and 54 rays of green light flew out from his glabella. Instantly, they formed a shimmering green sword that slashed down at Dao Lord Cloud Rain. Pust! Dao Lord Cloud Rain's expression changed starkly. Given his cultivation, he could naturally sense the terrifying power contained within the green sword. This was a killing technique targeted at the essence spirit. Desolate Marshal is way too ruthless and doesn't give me a chance to survive. Dao Lord Cloud Rain roared internally and did not retreat when he saw that he could not escape. He conjured his essence spirit secret skill right away and prepared to retaliate. All of a sudden, Zemo chanted Sanskrit. The 6th Daming mantra was released. Dao Lord Cloud Rain shuddered and the formation of his essence spirit secret skill slowed down. The green lotus sword entered his glabella instantly and pierced through his consciousness, slashing towards his essence spirit. Dao Lord Cloud Rain bit his tongue gently and released his essence spirit secret skill at that moment of life and death, colliding against the green lotus sword. However, this collision happened within his consciousness. The aftershock of the collision caused cracks to appear on his essence spirit. Dao Lord Cloud Rain's gaze dimmed and he spat out a mouthful of blood as his life force drained rapidly. His essence spirit was shattered and he could no longer survive. The titular disciple of Cloud Rain sect, the former number 2 of the Dharma characteristic ranking who dominated the cultivation world for 5,000 years, ended up dying in this unknown bamboo forest. Immortal Sword. Sure. Ruthless. Those were the final words uttered by Dao Lord Cloud Rain. Right before his death, his grievances were towards Immortal Sword, not Zemo. With a thud, Dao Lord Cloud Rain fell with widened eyes, unable to die in peace. In reality, Dao Lord Cloud Rain did not know that Immortal Sword's ruthlessness was even more frightening than what he witnessed or could imagine. "Pianran, I know that you've suffered a lot over the years." Elder Qin sighed softly. How could she have not known that Qin Pianran's attention over the years were all spent on Immortal Sword? However, Immortal Sword's attitude towards Qin Pianran was neutral and aloof the entire time. Elder Qin said with slight heartache, "However, no matter what, you can't mix with a fiend of the fiend sex and become his Dao companion." "Master, I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Qin Pianran lowered her head and merely cried. Right then, a change happened on the other side of the battlefield. Immortal Sword escaped. Dao Lord Cloud Rain was dead. When Elder Qin saw that, she sighed internally and sent a voice transmission. "Pianran, since Immortal Sword has left, you should leave too. I hope that you will behave yourself in the future." "Master." Disbelief flashed through Qin Pianran's eyes as she looked up instinctively. That single look caused her face to turn pale with fright. The menacing face of Immortal Sword appeared behind Elder Qin. His features were contorted and his eyes were filled with killing intent. "Old thing, I knew that you would be too soft to do it." The cold voice of Immortal Sword sounded slowly, "Since that's the case, I'll send you and your disciple down to hell together." Elder Qin was caught off guard. A sword pierced her head instantly and her essence spirit was destroyed on the spot. She had not expected that Immortal Sword would attack her. "Master!" Qin Pianran roared and lunged forward like a lunatic. A sword beam pierced into Qin Pianran's glabella. Qin Pianran froze on the spot stiffly and her gaze gradually dimmed. Chapter 1280 Danger. Chapter 1280 Danger. Yen Beichen froze on the spot, his eyes widened and his lips trembled as he looked at everything in disbelief. He wanted to shout but could not make a single sound. Qin Pianran's life force drained rapidly. Her essence spirit was pierced by the sword beam and even an immortal wouldn't be able to save her. The reason why she did not die immediately was because she had consumed the 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir previously and her essence spirit was not destroyed on the spot. Qin Pianran turned back slowly and looked at Yen Beichen in the distance with a gentle expression. Her eyes revealed a deep reluctance and longing. Their time together was too short. Initially, they wanted to leave the cultivation world and stay together for the rest of their lives. Unfortunately, everything was over. "Beichen, I'm sorry." Qin Pianran's tone was weak, as though every single word she said was draining her of her life rapidly. Can't be with Yu anymore. Why you have to take care? Qin Pianran could no longer breathe. She felt miserable at the thought that Yan Beichen would be left alone and had to endure unimaginable torment after her departure. She could not help but sigh and fall stiffly forward. The white clouds in the skies shifted. Countless images flashed through her mind, all of them scenes of her and Yan Beichen in this bamboo forest and wooden house over the years. Finally, there was only a figure left in her eyes. She closed her eyes with that figure. Yan Beichen did not move at all and merely watched everything in a daze. His body trembled slightly and he felt a sharp pain in his chest, as though there was a sharp weapon that was poking him repeatedly. He had once said that he would never let go even if Qin Pianran wanted to leave. He had promised Qin Pianran that he would stay by her side for the rest of his life and never leave her. But now he could only watch Qin Pianran leave helplessly. Why? What have I done wrong? What did Pianran do wrong? We wanted to leave the cultivation world. Why did you guys deny that from us and insist on hunting us down to tear us apart? Yan Beichen's fingers were dug deeply into the mud. His eyes were bloodshot and his heart was filled with endless hatred. He hated the world, Dao Lord Immortal Sword, Dao Lord Cloud Rain, Sword Sect, the cultivation world and everything else. In fact, he even hated himself. He hated himself for not realizing the danger earlier and leaving this place. He hated himself for being useless. He could only watch as his beloved died in front of him. The hatred surged into the skies endlessly, almost materializing and piercing through the world. A series of fiend chi appeared within Yan Beichen's body, pitch black and extremely terrifying. In the depths of the bamboo forest, a fiend saber that was initially asleep gradually awakened under the stimulation of that hatred. The fiend saber trembled slightly. The immense hatred made it extremely excited. This was true hatred. If one had not experienced such a heart-wrenching change, they would never be able to comprehend the true power of the Hatred Sutra. Apart from its first master, even Dao Lord Hatred did not meet the requirements of the Hatred Sutra. That was the reason why Dao Lord Hatred's opening was discovered by Su Zimo during their fight and countered by many incantations of the Buddhist monasteries. Su Zimo clenched his fists with a cold expression. The entire process happened too quickly for him to react. Immortal Sword wanted Dao Lord Cloud Rain to kill Yan Beichen, so Su Zimo could only save Yan Beichen first. If he chose to save Qin Pianran, Yan Beichen would die. This was Immortal Sword's scheme. This scheme sent 3 people to their graves. Dao Lord Cloud Rain, Elder Qin and Qin Pianran were all dead. After Immortal Sword killed Qin Pianran, he sneered and transformed into a sword beam that sped into the distance. There were many escape techniques in the cultivation world. The speed of sword escape was definitely ranked at the front. Immortal Sword believed that given his cultivation realm, Su Zimo would not be able to stop him if he wanted to escape. Immortal Sword, let's see where you can escape to. Su Zimo's killing intent was already at its limits. At the sight of Immortal Sword's escape, he roared and endless lightning surged from his body. At the same time, a pair of dermic power wings grew behind him. His body transformed into a golden beam of light as he chased after Immortal Sword. Lightning escape, ethereal wings and boundless golden light were released at the same time. Su Zimo's speed was at his limits and he was even faster than Immortal Sword. Before Immortal Sword could escape far, he felt a chilling killing intent approaching him. It was like a beam of light piercing his back and his scalp felt numb. He turned back and gasped. Su Zimo was right behind him and had already caught up. The distance between them was closing continuously. At this rate, Su Zimo would be able to catch up to him before long. Impossible. Immortal Sword's heart skipped a beat and his eyes were filled with panic. Desolate Martial is only at the Dharma characteristic realm. How can his movement technique reach such a level? Finally, a hint of panic flashed through Immortal Sword's eyes. Su Zimo's strength had completely exceeded his expectations. Don't panic. Suddenly a voice sounded in his mind. Immortal Sword was delighted when he heard that voice. With this person by his side, he no longer had to escape and could turn around at any time to join forces with this person to kill Desolate Martial. That was because this was none other than Heavenly Secrets of Enigma Palace. The only thing he knew was that Heavenly Secrets was at the conjoint body realm. However, even he did not know just how strong Heavenly Secrets was. The successors of Enigma Palace had always been extremely mysterious. However, one thing was certain: Heavenly Secrets' combat strength was definitely above his. Now that Desolate Marshal's 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics had already dissipated and he released hundreds of heaven-slaying sword chi, the power of his essence spirit was most likely almost gone. If the two of them joined forces, they had a 100% chance of killing Desolate Marshal. Furthermore, Heavenly Secrets was still hidden in stealth. Even he did not notice when Heavenly Secrets arrived. The speed of Immortal Sword gradually slowed down. The distance between him and Su Zimo was closing continuously. When it was less than 100 feet away, Immortal Sword suddenly turned around and an extremely sharp spirit consciousness burst forth from his glabella. It formed a long sword that stabbed towards Su Zimo's head with a shuddering killing intent. It was Sword Sek's essence spirit secret skill. At the same time, a figure suddenly appeared in the void beside Immortal Sword. Wearing a wide Daoist robe and a Confucian crown on his head, he had a faint smile on his face, but his attacks were extremely sharp without any mercy. The scholar's glabella lit up and his spirit consciousness condensed into a gray arrow that tore through the air as though it could pierce through everything. The scholar activated his essence spirit secret skill at the same time. That essence spirit secret skill was even more terrifying and sharp than the sword of Immortal Sword. The release of 2 essence spirit secret skills from 2 conjoint body mighty figures placed Su Zimo in danger instantly. Chapter 1281, Obsessive Love is Evanescent. Chapter 1281, Obsessive Love is Evanescent. When Immortal Sword turned and attacked, it was extremely sudden. Furthermore, Heavenly Secrets had appeared. Initially he thought that Su Zimo would be caught off guard and would definitely be shocked. In his shock, there was a high chance that he would be killed instantly by the 2 essence spirit secret skills. Unfortunately, Immortal Sword was disappointed. When he turned back, there was no hint of panic on Su Zimo's face. When he conjured his essence spirit secret skill, Su Zimo's spirit consciousness was gathering as well, as though he was prepared. Crackle. Suddenly, a whip made of lightning appeared from Su Zimo's glabella. It emitted a destructive aura and whipped towards the incoming sword. A single essence spirit secret skill was not enough. Buzz. The void trembled. A bedazzling golden light burst forth from Su Zimo's glabella. A gigantic swastika symbol descended, as though it possessed a ton of weight and was flawless as it charged towards the essence spirit sword of Immortal Sword as well. 2 essence spirit secret skills were released at the same time. Immortal Sword's expression changed starkly. If Su Zimo only had a single essence spirit secret skill, it would be nothing much. After all, Su Zimo was only at the Dharma characteristic realm. Even if the essence spirit secret skill was inherited from the Thunder Emperor, it would not be able to hurt him. However, Su Zimo had released 2 essence spirit secret skills now and they were all directed towards him. Heavenly Secrets' essence spirit secret skill was completely ignored. What a lunatic. Immortal Sword cursed. The 3 essence spirit secret skills collided instantly. Although it was silent, the void trembled, distorted and even collapsed. A terrifying spirit consciousness fluctuation burst forth and the surrounding bamboo forest turned into dust silently. Ah! Immortal Sword shrieked and a sharp pain came from his essence spirit within his consciousness. His essence spirit was injured in this clash. Desolate Marshal, you have to die for injuring my essence spirit. Immortal Sword roared with a menacing expression. In his opinion, there was no way Su Zimo could defend against Heavenly Secrets' essence spirit secret skill since he had already released both his essence spirit secret skills. All of a sudden, the moment the essence spirit arrow released by Heavenly Secrets descended, Su Zimo's left wrist lit up with a resplendent, sacred golden light. The golden light extended rapidly and formed a golden barrier around Su Zimo. Mysterious and ancient Buddhist words were etched on the surface of the barrier. In fact, Sanskrit of the Buddhist monasteries sounded from Su Zimo's left wrist in a deafening manner. The entire time, there was a faint smile on Heavenly Secrets' face and his expression had not changed. However, he frowned the instant the golden barrier formed. He believed that he could calculate everything. Before he attacked, he had already predicted Su Zimo's reaction and expected the latter to use the Mingwang prayer beads to defend against his essence spirit secret skill. In fact, he had already anticipated beforehand that the damaged Mingwang prayer beads would not be able to defend against his essence spirit secret skill. However, he miscalculated. Suddenly he realized that the Mingwang prayer beads on Su Zimo's left wrist were complete and full. Boom. A loud bang sounded when the arrow struck the golden barrier. The golden barrier trembled violently and instantly, cracks appeared on it. Snap. Immediately after, the golden barrier shattered. As for the essence spirit arrow that was piercing over, it had already dissipated after a violent collision. Heavenly Secrets retracted his smile and narrowed his eyes slightly. He looked at Su Zimo deeply before grabbing Immortal Sword at the side and turning into a streak of light, speeding into the distance. He did not choose to continue fighting Su Zimo and chose to escape with Immortal Sword instead. His escape technique was much faster than Immortal Sword escape. Su Zimo frowned and watched the two of them leave without chasing after them. The scholar that appeared later had a mysterious background and powerful combat strength. His movement technique was frighteningly fast. Given his speed, he might not be able to catch up even if he gave chase. Furthermore, Yen Beichen was severely injured and was still in the bamboo forest behind him. Su Zimo was worried about what might happen to Yen Beichen if he chased for a prolonged period of time. He knew very well that although Yen Beichen seemed cold and heartless, he was someone extremely emotional once his heart was moved. Experiencing such an unforeseen event dealt a huge blow to Yen Beichen. Although he was indignant, Su Zimo decided to turn around and check on Yen Beichen. Before long, Su Zimo had already returned to the bamboo forest. Yen Beichen was kneeling beside Qin Pianran's corpse with his head lowered. He was motionless with a wooden expression and a hollow gaze. If it was anyone else, they would have long broken down from yelling hysterically. However, right from the beginning, Yen Beichen did not say a single word or shout. He merely looked at Qin Pianran silently. Su Zimo accompanied him at the side without disturbing. However, he was truly worried when he looked at the silent Yen Beichen. If Yen Beichen were to cry out, it might even be better. The more Yen Beichen was silent, the more worried Su Zimo was. "Brother Yen, how about talking instead of holding it in?" Su Zimo could not help but persuade. "I am fine." After a long time, Yen Beichen said slowly in a deep and hoarse voice. Su Zimo's expression relaxed slightly. All of a sudden, Yen Beichen opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. The moment he spat out that mouthful of blood, Yen Beichen's life force was clearly much weaker. His black hair turned gray at a speed visible to the naked eye. Wisdom beyond one's years brings about harm to oneself, while obsessive one-sided love is evanescent. If Yen Beichen remained the same, his lifespan would be greatly reduced. Many grisly blood splattered on Qin Pianran's fair cheeks. Yen Beichen tore his clothes and wiped away the blood on her face gently and carefully. The gentleness in Yen Beichen's eyes made Su Zimo's heart clench. He sighed internally and turned away, unable to bear to continue watching. Just like that, Yen Beichen knelt in front of Qin Pianran for an entire day and night. He did not take a single step away. Or rather, his gaze was fixed on Qin Pianran the entire time. Worried, Su Zimo remained by the side as well. Morning came and the sun rose. Su Zimo could not hold it in any longer. He walked forward and took out the elixir jade bottle he snatched from the Grand Primordium ancient temple from his storage bag. Initially, there were 2 9-revolution soul return elixirs in the jade bottle. Earlier on, Su Zimo had already consumed one before he chased after Immortal Sword. Actually, he had already sensed a faint, imperceptible killing intent the moment he moved to chase after Immortal Sword. It was a warning from his spirit perception and was definitely not an illusion. At that time, Su Zimo's essence spirit was already extremely weak after releasing 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics and hundreds of heaven-slaying sword chi. That was the reason why he only gave chase after consuming a 9-revolution soul return elixir and even released 2 essence spirit secret skills later on. Right now, there was only a single 9-revolution soul return elixir left in the jade bottle. Yen Beichen's essence spirit was injured to begin with. In this battle he was severely injured by Immortal Sword and now he was dealt such a blow. If he did not consume the 9-revolution soul return elixir, it would probably be impossible for his essence spirit to recover completely. "Brother Yen, consume this elixir first." Su Zimo handed the 9-revolution soul return elixir over and said softly. Yen Beichen received it expressionlessly. Su Zimo felt slightly relieved. As long as Yen Beichen consumed the 9-revolution soul return elixir, he could at least survive. Before that thought was finished, Yen Beichen squashed it with 2 fingers. Instantly, the 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir turned into dust and scattered into the mud. Chapter 1282 Master of the Fiend Saber. Chapter 1282, Master of the Fiend Saber. Brother Yen. Suzimo was shocked. The 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir was extremely precious and he barely survived just to obtain it. If not for a freak coincidence, he might have become a corpse in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple as well. However, that elixir was crushed by Yen Beichen casually. Brother Yen, why, sigh. Suzimo sighed. Of course, he could understand why Yen Beichen would do anything given the circumstances. Even if the 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir was destroyed, he could think of another way to search for it. Tianhuang mainland was vast and boundless with countless ancient ruins. He could definitely find another one. Pianran is already dead. What's the point of this elixir to me? Yen Beichen looked at Qin Pianran's face in a daze and said calmly. When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. The reason why Yen Beichen crushed the 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir was because he was already bent on dying. Brother Yen, now that things have come to this, you have to take care. Even with her death, fellow Daoist Qin wouldn't want you to be this despondent. Worried, Su Zimo consoled softly. That's right. Yen Beichen said, Pianran wanted me to be fine before she left. But how can I? How can I live alone without Pianran? Suddenly, his expression turned extremely pained as he pounded the ground repeatedly with his fists, causing mud to fly everywhere. I hate it. I hate it so much. Yen Beichen reared his head and cried into the skies. His eyes were bloodshot as he let out a tragic howl. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying power spread out from Yen Beichen's body. It was a familiar power that caused Su Zimo's heart to skip a beat. Immediately after, the ground beneath Su Zimo's feet trembled. It was as though something extremely terrifying had awoken and was charging out from underground. Su Zimo's expression changed. Suddenly he thought of an ancient fiend item. Boom. Right then, the ground not far away suddenly cracked and a black shadow surged into the skies. It emitted rumbling fiend chi as though it wanted to devour the world. Su Zimo focused his gaze. The Hatred Fiend Saber. That ancient fiend saber was the most terrifying weapon Su Zimo had seen up till this point of his cultivation. To think that this ancient fiend saber would possess such sentience that it could sense the immense power of hatred contained within Yen Beichen's body and came into being. Clang. Clang. The blade of the Hatred Fiend Saber trembled continuously. Su Zimo could sense the joy and excitement of a living being coming from that ancient fiend saber. Shoo. The Hatred Fiend Saber transformed into a black shadow that shone with a cold glint. Carrying a torrential fiend chi, it stabbed towards Yen Beichen. Watch out. Su Zimo hollered and struck all of a sudden. Summoning the Creation Lotus platform, he charged towards the Hatred Fiend Saber. Boom. The green light and pitch-black fiend shadow collided with a deafening bang. A semicircular halo of power burst forth from the collision point of the two weapons and spread wildly in all directions. Against the impact of that power, Su Zimo could not steady himself and was sent flying while his Creation Lotus platform fell to the side. Su Zimo was shocked. Even when used by Dao Lord Hatred, this ancient fiend saber did not possess such terrifying power. After flying for dozens of feet, Su Zimo ignored the pain in his body and struggled to stand up hurriedly, looking in Yen Beichen's direction. Immediately his expression changed. The Hatred Fiend Saber had already stabbed towards Yen Beichen's chest and entered instantly. It pierced Yen Beichen's chest and a bloodied blade protruded from his back. Brother Yen. Su Zimo exclaimed and wanted to charge forward. The power of his essence spirit was almost depleted after his battle with Immortal Sword and Cloud Rain. However, even if he had to risk his life, he could not let anything happen to Yen Beichen. Don't come over. Right then Yen Beichen roared. Su Zimo stopped in his tracks. Yen Beichen had a pained expression as his features were squeezed together. Although his body was trembling from the pain, he grit his teeth and said, "Again. It's not painful enough." The moment he said that, the Hatred Fiend Saber pulled itself out and pierced Yen Beichen's chest once more. Good again? Yen Beichen roared. Poof. Another slash. That slash had already punctured Yen Beichen's abdomen. Good, good, good. Yen Beichen roared in laughter as though he had gone mad. Again? With each stab of the Hatred Fiend Saber, Yen Beichen's body would tremble in pain. However, his eyes revealed relief as a form of release instead. Su Zimo watched everything in a daze. He finally understood why Yen Beichen did not allow him to step forward. That was because Yen Beichen was using this method to torture himself. It was to resolve the pain in his heart. Perhaps that was the only way he could ease the pain in his heart. Poof, poof, poof. In the blink of an eye, Yen Beichen had already been struck dozens of times. Bloody wounds appeared on his body in a shocking manner, and his chest was almost punctured by the hatred fiend's saber. There was another reason why Su Zimo did not step forward to stop it. That was because although he was shocked to discover that Yen Beichen's heart had already shattered after receiving so many slashes and he had lost a lot of blood chi, the life force in his body did not deplete. Instead, it intensified. His power of blood chi was rising rapidly. An extremely terrifying power gradually awakened, germinated and grew within Yen Beichen's body. Balls of pitch-black fiend chi grew within Yen Beichen's body, turning richer and more terrifying as they enveloped his body. The blood vessels in Yen Beichen's eyes had already turned black. His eyes turned pitch black like two gigantic black holes, and the hatred within seemed like it could devour everything. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He could clearly see that Yen Beichen's wounds were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye under the shroud of the rumbling fiend chi. Finally, the hatred fiend saber stopped. It stood upright in front of Yen Beichen. The body of the ancient fiend saber was tainted with Yen Beichen's endless blood. At that moment, the aura it emitted had already fused with Yen Beichen. The hatred fiend saber had already acknowledged its master through blood. Yen Beichen's consciousness seemed to be out of his control as well. He reached out with both hands and gripped the handle of the hatred fiend saber. Rumbling fiend chi extended from the saber and surged into his body. The fiend chi formed dark, sinister and cold words in midair. Every single word was filled with torrential hatred. The hatred was boundless and extended to heaven and earth. Those words eventually surged into Yen Beichen's body. Upon seeing that, Su Zimo finally understood something. He finally knew why he could not find the Hatred Sutra in the storage bag of Dao Lord Hatred back then. It was not because the Hatred Sutra was destroyed by Dao Lord Hatred, but because it was within the Hatred Fiend Saber itself. One was only qualified to cultivate this number 1 fiend technique of the ancient era after obtaining the recognition of the Hatred Fiend Saber. Chapter 1283 Birth of the Asura. Chapter 1283 Birth of the Asura. The Hatred Fiend Saber was the weapon of the ancient Fiend Emperor Hatred. The ancient Fiend Saber contained an extremely terrifying power that Dao Lord Hatred did not manage to release completely. But now that power was finally showing itself. That power did not merely bring about changes to Yen Beichen's blood chi and body. Endless fiend chi surged into Yen Beichen's consciousness and coiled around his essence spirit. The wounds on his essence spirit were healing rapidly as well. Su Zimo felt mixed emotions when he sensed the changes in Yen Beichen. He was delighted that the Hatred Fiend Saber had recognized Yen Beichen as its master. At the very least, the latter's life was not in danger and the injury to his essence spirit was resolved. He was worried because no one knew what Yen Beichen would become after inheriting the legacy of the Fiend Emperor Hatred. About 2 hours later, Yen Beichen's essence spirit had already recovered. This speed was even faster than the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir. The power contained by the Hatred Fiend Saber came from the ancient Fiend Emperor after all. With the recovery of his essence spirit, Yen Beichen's aura rose rapidly under the support of that tremendous power. In less than an hour there was a boom. Yen Beichen shuddered and his cultivation realm rose by a level. He entered the Dharma characteristic realm 20 years ago and his essence spirit was injured thereafter. His cultivation realm had always been at the early stage Dharma characteristic realm. In less than an hour, he was already at mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm. However, that breakthrough was not over yet. 2 hours later, Yen Beichen broke through once more. Late-stage Dharma characteristic realm. Back when Dao Lord Hatred obtained this ancient Fiend Saber, he merely inherited the Hatred Sutra but could not inherit the power of this Fiend Saber. That was because Dao Lord Hatred had not truly obtained the recognition of the Hatred Fiend Saber. However, it was different for Yen Beichen. Yen Beichen had completely inherited the Hatred Fiend Saber. The Hatred Fiend Saber appeared on its own accord to acknowledge him as its master. When night descended, Yen Beichen broke through once more. Perfected Dharma characteristic realm. From early-stage Dharma characteristic to perfected Dharma characteristic, it only took a day. This was a speed that no one in history could match. Such an opportunity was absolutely unprecedented. However, Suzimo sighed gently internally. There was no hint of envy in his eyes. Instead, there was a deep look of pity. For anyone else, an opportunity as such was something they could only dream of. However, he knew that if Yen Beichen had to make a choice, he would rather have his essence spirit injuries never heal completely than receive such an opportunity. That was because the reason that triggered his torrential hatred such that the hatred fiend Saber acknowledged him as its master was the death of a kin. The injury to Yen Beichen's essence spirit had already healed. However, the wounds in his heart would probably never heal. After entering the perfected Dharma characteristic realm, Yen Beichen's aura gradually stabilized. After all, there was a qualitative change in strength between the major cultivation realms and there was an unimaginable barrier between them. The hatred fiend Saber had already reached its limit by allowing Yen Beichen to break through to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm in a single day. In the blink of an eye, the night passed. Yen Beichen sat there motionlessly and gripped the hatred fiend Saber with both hands. His eyes were pitch black without any white in them as his gray hair swayed gently. For the entire day and night, Suzimo stood by his side without taking a single step away. In fact, he did not even cultivate and recuperate by himself. He merely consumed a few elixirs casually and stayed by Yen Beichen's side, afraid that something would happen to him. The sun rose. A warm glow shone on Yen Beichen's cheeks. All of a sudden, Yen Beichen's expression changed and the black color in his fiend eyes faded gradually, revealing the whites of his eyes and returning to normal. "Brother Yen?" Suzimo attempted to call out softly. "I am fine." Yen Beichen spoke slowly with a calm expression. Suzimo heaved out a sigh of relief. Initially, he was worried that Yen Beichen would become a completely different person after inheriting the inheritance of the hatred fiend Saber, similar to the possibility of being assimilated. Now, it seemed like Yen Beichen still remembered him. Of course, Suzimo could also vaguely sense that Yen Beichen was indeed different from before. At the very least, he did not have the same determination to die as earlier on. Hatred was right. Suddenly, Yen Beichen said, "It's impossible for me to lead a peaceful life with Pian Ran. I'm the Asura and my hands are tainted with endless blood. There's no way I can ever leave the cultivation world." Suzimo was silent. To think that Dao Lord Hatred's final words would end up as a prophecy. "If I, Hatred, can find you today, someone else will do so tomorrow. You will never be able to leave the cultivation world or dream about living in peace." His words came true. Immortal Sword had indeed appeared. I was too naive. Yen Beichen's expression was mocking as he laughed. To think that I would really think that I could leave the secular world and avoid strife and killing. It's all my fault for Pian Ran's death. I was an Asura who achieved my Dao through killing. Since I chose this path, there's no way back. I was the one who killed Pian Ran. I shouldn't have fallen in love with her. Yen Beichen said those words calmly. However, Suzimo knew that every single word was like a sharp thorn that stabbed Yen Beichen repeatedly in the chest. Yen Beichen carried Qin Pian Ran's cold corpse and stood up slowly, arriving at the crack where the hatred fiend Saber was born. "Pian Ran, don't worry. Those that hurt you this time round, I won't let anyone off. I'll make them pay 100 times more. I'm going to turn Sword Sect into rivers of blood." Yen Beichen's tone revealed endless killing intent that was cold and sinister, causing one to shudder. Suzimo knew. The Asura had returned. To be precise, the true Asura had just descended into this world. The current Asura was many times stronger than the former titular disciple, Yen Beichen. Yen Beichen no longer had any weaknesses. He no longer had any attachments or emotions. What was even more terrifying was that Yen Beichen had inherited the legacy of Fiend Emperor Hatred. The Dao of the Asura, the Dao of Hatred. Nobody knew what realm the Asura who cultivated the Hatred Sutra and wielded the Hatred Fiend Saber would reach. Suzimo could not imagine either. Perhaps he might end up even more terrifying than the ancient Fiend Emperor Hatred. Yen Beichen looked at Qin Pian Ran deeply with endless reluctance and longing in his eyes. He then made up his mind and released his hands. Qin Pian Ran's corpse fell into the dark abyss of the crack and gradually disappeared. From this day forth, there will only be the Asura and no Yen Beichen left in this world. Yen Beichen said and waved his sleeves gently. Bang! Boom! Boom! The crack on the ground healed slowly under his immense dermic powers, and in the blink of an eye, it returned to normal. It was as though Yen Beichen was already buried along with Qin Pianran in this abyss. Zimo, I'm leaving. The Asura leaped up. Brother Yen, where are you going? Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he asked hurriedly. He was afraid that Yen Beichen would be reckless and kill his way into Sword Sect impulsively. It was true that the Asura obtained the inheritance of the Fiend Emperor hatred, but he was only at the Dharma characteristic realm at the end of the day. If he were to kill his way into Sword Sect, he would be suppressed by countless experts within at the top. Don't worry, I won't be reckless. The Asura said without turning back, and his figure disappeared quickly. Chapter 1284, Search. Chapter 1284, Search. Enigma Palace, Heavenly Secrets Dao Residence. Two figures flashed. Heavenly Secrets had brought Immortal Sword back to his Dao residence. Immortal Sword's face was pale as he panted slightly. His eyes were filled with endless hatred as he grit his teeth. Desolate Marshal. I'm irreconcilable with you. Although he was saved by Heavenly Secrets this time round, his essence spirit was injured. It was extremely difficult to recover from injuries to the essence spirit. Even with Sword Sect's foundation, they did not have miraculous elixirs similar to the 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir. Initially, his plan to kill the Asura this time round would have definitely succeeded. To think that everything would be spoiled by a mere Dao Lord Desolate Marshal. Heavenly Secrets said indifferently, actually, you don't have to be overly indignant. At the very least, the Asura is crippled and your goal can be considered accomplished. That's right, that slut, Qin Pianran, is dead too. Immortal Sword nodded. Pausing for a moment, he turned and asked, Brother Heavenly Secrets, do you have the 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir? If you do, I can help you obtain any treasure you want in exchange. Sorry. Heavenly Secrets smiled apologetically. Immortal Sword's gaze dimmed and his expression darkened once more. There was a fleeting hint of mockery in the depths of Heavenly Secrets' eyes. Even if he had the 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir, he would definitely not hand it over to Immortal Sword, let alone the fact that he did not have one with him. At most, the two of them were just making use of one another. Furthermore, Immortal Sword was a narrow-minded and ungrateful person. Even if he was given the 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir, he would not remember this favor. What happened to Qin Pianran? She was still killed mercilessly in the end. Dao Lord Cloud Rain had known him for so many years and was schemed against by him, resulting in his death. A moment later, Immortal Sword asked in a seemingly casual manner, By the way, how did you arrive so coincidentally, Brother Heavenly Secrets? Initially, there was no mistake in my divination for your trip and I did not follow along. Heavenly Secrets said, however, not long after, I divined once more and discovered that the trajectory of this matter had suddenly turned blurry. I realized that something might have happened and made a move immediately. Although Heavenly Secrets still had a warm expression and explained patiently, he sneered internally. He could tell that Immortal Sword already bore some resentment towards him. Immortal Sword continued, Brother Heavenly Secrets, Desolate Marshal's combat strength was already weakened after he expended his stamina and released Essence Spirit secret skills consecutively. Why didn't you take advantage of that rare opportunity to kill him? I can't kill him. Heavenly Secrets was still not impatient in the slightest as he shook his head. Indeed, I can defeat Desolate Marshal with ease given my capabilities. However, it's impossible to kill him. Desolate Marshal knows many escape techniques. If he sees that something is amiss and uses his escape techniques to flee, I won't be able to catch up to him either. Furthermore, Desolate Marshal already noticed my existence beforehand. His senses are way too sharp. Bang. Immortal Sword slammed his fist heavily on the stone table beside him to vent the rage in his heart. Gritting his teeth, he said, It's probably going to be extremely difficult to kill Desolate Marshal now that this opportunity was missed. Desolate Marshal cultivated 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics and each of them is 87 feet tall. However, he's merely at the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm. Once he enters the conjoint body realm, only a Mahayana Patriarch will be able to suppress him. The conjoint body realm was to fuse heaven and earth Dharma characteristics into one's body. If Desolate Marshal were to advance to the conjoint body realm and fused with the 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics he cultivated, what would happen to his combat strength? Heavenly Secrets was in no hurry nor frustrated when he heard Immortal Sword's grumble. he said indifferently, there might be a chance. Oh. Immortal Sword raised his brow and asked, why do you say that? Heavenly Secrets replied, the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking comes up in 100 years' time. You mean to say? Immortal Sword fell into deep thought and pondered for a moment before shaking his head. What sort of a chance is that? Given Desolate Marshal's current combat strength, he's enough to become the #1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking. Furthermore, Desolate Marshal has a Mahayana Patriarch backing him. Given the grandeur of the Dharma characteristic ranking, there's no guarantee that this Patriarch won't appear. At that time, who would dare to touch him? Heavenly Secrets smiled indifferently. According to my calculations, that person from Dragon Burial Valley will definitely not live for more than 100 years. Immortal Sword shook his head. Even so, the 4 unorthodox groups, Snowdrift Valley, Dipankra Monastery and some other super sects are on good terms with him. It's impossible for us to kill Desolate Marshal in front of everyone. Previously, their super sects could even claim that Desolate Marshal was a fiend demon and attempt to kill him openly under the guise of slaying demons. But now that reason has become a joke. Immortal Sword continued, furthermore, given Desolate Marshal's capabilities, even conjoint body mighty figures won't be able to stop him if he wanted to escape. Just wait, the chance will definitely come. Heavenly Secrets narrowed his eyes and said meaningfully. Right then his expression changed. As though he sensed something, he waved his sleeves and the doors of the Dao residence opened as a messenger spirit crane flew in. The messenger crane looked extremely sinister with ghastly green eyes. One of the 9 races, the Witch race. Immortal Sword frowned slightly. Only the Witch race possessed a spirit crane as such. Heavenly Secrets said something to the spirit crane and returned it. Before long, a few cultivators in green robes and wide hoods arrived at the entrance of Heavenly Secrets' Dao residence. Elder Wuxia, it's my honor. Please forgive me for not welcoming you earlier. Heavenly Secrets cupped his fists with a smile. You're too kind, fellow Daoist Heavenly Secrets. The green-robed cultivator in the lead said slowly. He removed the hood on his head and revealed a skinny old face. His hair was thin and his eyes were green. This is Immortal Sword. He was once the titular disciple of Sword Sect and now, he's already at the conjoint body realm. This is Elder Wuxia of the Witch race. Heavenly Secrets gave a brief introduction of both parties. I've heard a lot about you. Wuxia smiled gently and his eyes flickered. Suddenly he said, fellow Daoist Immortal Sword's essence spirit seems to be injured. Elder, you are sharp. Immortal Sword's expression darkened as he said hatefully, to be honest, I was ambushed by my enemies and my essence spirit was injured. He was not willing to lose face by telling the actual truth that he lost to a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord in an essence spirit fight. Elder Wuxia, why are you here? Heavenly Secrets did not bother to exchange pleasantries with Wuxia and asked straightforwardly. I want you to help me look for someone. Wuxia said in a deep voice. There are many secret skills in the Witch race and many methods of divining how to locate someone. Why would you look for me? Heavenly Secrets chuckled without commenting. I did use the secret skills of the Witch race, but I couldn't find him. Wuxia shook his head. Oh. Heavenly Secrets narrowed his eyes and asked, what's the background of someone who can't be found even by the secret skills of the Witch race? To be precise, he's not human. Wuxia flipped his palm and a black scale appeared. What is this? Immortal Sword frowned slightly. The black scale emitted an extremely terrifying aura that resembled demonic chi but was different at the same time. Fiend demon? What fiend demon was worthy of the Witch race mobilizing such a large force such that they would even seek out Enigma Palace? Sweeping his gaze, Heavenly Secrets received the scale with a grim expression. After staring at it for a while, his expression changed as he exclaimed, a primordial taboo. Chapter 1285, Great Essence Creation Elixir. Chapter 1285, Great Essence Creation Elixir. Even Immortal Sword could not help but gasp when he heard the words primordial taboo and his expression changed. It's still alive. There was a quiver in Immortal Sword's voice. A primordial taboo was unspeakable for any sect or faction. Apart from some super sects and ancient aristocratic families with deep lineages, most of the sects and cultivators had never even heard of it. In the records of those super sects, It was an extremely terrifying existence and could be called the god of massacre of the Primordial era. It killed and devoured everything, it could even slay dragons. Its status was even above the 9 races. Legend has it that an earth-shaking battle broke out in the Primordial era because the 10,000 races led by the Primordial 9 races fought against the Primordial Taboo. In that battle, countless living beings died. Countless races were wiped out forever. Because of that, the Primordial 9 races suffered immense losses as well. That was the reason why the human race was able to take advantage of the situation to fight against and suppress the Primordial 9 races later on. If not for that battle of the Primordial era, it would have been difficult for the human race to win the ancient war as well. Humans had a deep fear towards the Primordial 9 races. After all, they had been enslaved for countless years and that was a deep-rooted fear. The Primordial Taboo was an existence even more terrifying than the Primordial 9 races. It was easy to imagine the shock Immortal Sword felt when it heard the words, Primordial Taboo. Sensing the fear of Immortal Sword, Wuxia's eyes flashed with mockery. Fellow Daoist, there's no need to panic overly either. I divined that this thing's cultivation is only at the Dharma characteristic realm. At that point, Heavenly Secrets' expression softened. It was nothing much if it was only at the Dharma characteristic realm. As long as enough conjoined body mighty figures were sent out, it could be suppressed. If not, they could even send forth half-martial ancestors. However, Wuxia changed the topic. If it's given enough time and grows up, hee. At that time, blood will probably flow like rivers in Tianhuang mainland. None of your human super sects will be spared. Heavenly Secret said in a low voice, since it's a primordial taboo, it might be able to sense me using a secret skill to divine its location. It's fine as long as there are leads. Wuxia said coldly, don't worry, the witch race is not the only one from the primordial 9 races that will send people for this primordial taboo. The other races will send experts as well. With our races combining our strength, we'll definitely be able to suppress it as long as we can determine its location. Let me try. Heavenly Secrets conjured hand seals and channeled his essence spirit, spreading a divine light that descended on the pitch-black scale in his palm and began to divine. A moment later, he shuddered and could not help but grunt. Amazing. Finally, Heavenly Secrets retracted his smile. Not only did he fail in his divination this time round, that single scale nearly caused a backlash on his essence spirit. Taking a deep breath of air, Heavenly Secrets channeled his secret skill once more. A gray fog shrouded his eyes as he gripped the black scale and continued to divine. Gradually, a hint of blood appeared in the gray fog in Heavenly Secrets' eyes. As time passed by, his body trembled slightly and gradually intensified. Finally, the gray fog in Heavenly Secrets' eyes dispersed as he panted heavily with a pale expression. He released his palm and the black scale fell to the ground. It's in the middle continent. He withdrew a map of the middle continent from his storage bag and panted. I can't divine its exact location. I can only give you a rough area. It's within 500 kilometers of this area. Heavenly Secrets pointed to a sect emblem on the map and said in a deep voice. Elixir Yang sect. Immortal Sword looked at the map and murmured. All right. The green light in Wuxia's eyes shone brightly as he said coldly, there's no time to lose. I'll inform the other races right now and move immediately to head here. Heavenly Secrets, you have to follow us and divine its location at all times. Wuxia said. I can't. Heavenly Secrets shook his head. The divination has already exhausted my mental state. I have to rest for at least a year before I can recover. All right, we'll go first. Wuxia did not linger and left immediately. Middle Continent, Elixir Yang sect. Night Spirit, hurry and come take a look. I've refined a great essence creation elixir. In an elixir workshop, Xiaoning pinched an elixir and said joyfully to the cold Night Spirit beside her. A Dharma characteristic cultivator can advance a minor realm with a single great essence creation elixir. Xiaoning continued, it's a pity that I only managed to create one after refining for such a long time. However, it doesn't matter. I'll continue to refine them slowly. At that time I'll take one and leave one for Big Brother. Night Spirit, have one too and see if it's effective. Night Spirit lips curled and nodded. All of a sudden, his expression changed slightly as he frowned, seemingly sensing something. Xiaoning was immersed in the joy of her success in refining the great essence creation elixir and did not notice anything unusual about Night Spirit. Xiaoning, I've got something on and have to leave first. Right then Night Spirit suddenly said. Go on with your work. Just come back earlier. Xiaoning waved it off and smiled. After a long silence, Night Spirit said, this matter is a little troublesome. I might be gone for a longer time. Xiaoning could hear something odd in Night Spirit's tone and asked, how long do you need? I don't know either. Perhaps 10 or 100 years. In any case, you don't have to worry if I don't return, Night Spirit said. Do you need my help? Xiaoning asked gently. It's fine. Night Spirit shook his head and did not continue chatting with Xiaoning. Turning to leave, he disappeared from her sights before long. Is it finally about to begin? Outside Elixir Yang sect, Night Spirit's expression was cold as he murmured. In a flash, he disappeared into the void like a ghost. At the same time, in the middle continent and bamboo forest, Su Zimo sighed deeply as he watched Yen Beichen leave. The birth of a true Asura would definitely cause a bloodbath on Tianhuang mainland. None of the people or factions involved in this would be spared. Su Zimo shifted his gaze towards Dao Lord Cloud Rain's corpse and removed his storage bag. As the titular disciple of Cloud Rain sect, Dao Lord Cloud Rain's storage bag might be filled with treasures. Su Zimo opened his storage bag and swept his gaze across. There were many cultivation techniques and secret skills within. However, since they were not orthodox, Su Zimo could not be bothered to cultivate them. There were also some supreme grade and perfect grade dermic weapons within. Su Zimo put everything away. What truly lit up his eyes was an elixir. There was a great essence creation elixir in Dao Lord Cloud Rain's storage bag. Back in the Grand Primordium ancient temple, everyone fell into a hallucination and caught sight of a great essence creation elixir. This was not a hallucination, this was a true ancient elixir. Right now he was at the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm. If he consumed this great essence creation elixir here, he could break through to the late-stage Dharma characteristic realm swiftly. At that time, his heaven and earth Dharma characteristics would grow once more. Chapter 1286 Martial Dao Furnace. Chapter 1286, Martial Dao Furnace. Pingyang Town. Not long ago, Su Zimo's prime body, his martial Dao true body, had already returned from Ethereal Peak. He had already memorized all the cultivation techniques and secret skills of Ethereal Peak. In the familiar courtyard, the prime body sat beneath the peach blossom tree and could not help but recall that night many years ago. A woman in a blood robe stood here with a hazy moonlight, bringing him into the cultivation world. Everything felt like a lifetime had passed. The prime body gradually closed his eyes. He was prepared to break through from the core formation realm and advance to the next realm. After forming a core, be it the immortal, Buddhist or demon Daos, they would achieve the same goal through different means. They would make use of the changes in their golden cores to connect to heaven and earth and form essence spirits. It was the same for the martial Dao. His prime body named the next realm the martial spirit realm. The essence spirit of the martial Dao was the martial spirit. It corresponded to the Yin spirit realm of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and the nascent soul realm of the immortal, Buddhist and Fiend cultivation techniques. Of course, his prime body was constantly improving on the martial Dao. According to the Martial Sutra, there was still a difference between his martial spirit and an ordinary essence spirit. The prime body sat motionlessly beneath the peach blossom tree, as though he was petrified. Gradually the prime body did not even have to breathe. Tao Yao swayed his branches gently. If he had not sensed the life force within the prime body, he would have thought that the prime body had passed away. The prime body was formed from the Dao fruit of the martial Dao. He was the one who created the Martial Sutra and had long cultivated to the 9th transformation of the 9 transformations, Dragon Elephant Force. The prime body had never fought with anyone and nobody knew his combat strength. To put it simply, Su Zimo's body back when he was at the Golden Core realm and cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness could not compare to his prime body in terms of physique and power of blood chi. Nobody, not even the prime body, knew what this martial spirit that was formed by the inner core breaking through the voids would become in the future. This process was not unfamiliar to the prime body. Bang, bang, bang. The prime body's expression was unchanged and he did not move on the surface. However, an earth-shaking sound echoed from within his body. His inner core charged into the voids continuously. There was a chance of failure in this process. If one's inner core was not strong enough, they would fail the breakthrough. However, for this prime body, nothing could stop his inner core that had cultivated the power of a dragon elephant. Before long, the void barrier in his body was broken. His consciousness appeared. His inner core barged in and fused with the soul in his consciousness, forming a martial spirit. The strange thing was that the martial spirit was not in human form. Instead, it was a ball of purple flames that emitted a shuddering aura. Tao Yao was initially protecting the prime body. However, the moment the prime body conjured his martial spirit, Tao Yao felt his heart skip a beat and transformed into his human form. In a flash, he hid in a corner of the courtyard with a bewildered expression. Even Tao Yao, who was at the Dharma characteristic realm, felt a sense of fear from the purple flames cultivated by the prime body. A long time later, the purple flames in his consciousness changed continuously and gradually took shape. Although it had the same appearance as Su Zimo, its body burned with a layer of purple flames. True enough. The prime body opened its eyes slowly and nodded. His martial Tao was extremely different from the cultivation path of immortals, Buddhas and fiends before core formation. Immortals, Buddhas and fiends cultivated by absorbing heaven and earth spirit chi with their bodies. As for the martial Tao, it viewed its own body as a part of the world and constantly opened up the power within. The prime body deduced that if one could cultivate to the 9th transformation of the martial Tao and advance to the martial spirit realm, there was a high chance that one could possess a power at the beginning of their martial spirit formation. The power was extremely vast and was closely related to the cultivator. It could be flames, weapons, ferocious beasts, or even a part of their bodies. The martial spirit conjured by the prime body was born with the martial spirit fire. Purple. It represented the aura of a saint and emperor. It was supreme. The reason why the prime body condensed the purple martial spirit fire was because he was prepared to view his body as a gigantic furnace in the second half of the Martial Sutra's cultivation technique. In the ancient saying, heaven and earth were the furnaces, all living beings were bronze, yin and yang were charcoal, and creation was manual work. His prime body viewed the martial Tao true body as a furnace. It cultivated all the sutras and fused them all into one body, gathering the strongest flames in the world to create a true supreme martial Tao. The martial spirit fire was the foundation of the martial Tao furnace. The prime body would not have to refine any dermic weapons in the future. As the furnace of the martial Tao, his physical body was his dermic weapon. Swoosh. When the martial spirit fire was formed, it had already begun to burn the martial Tao true body. At the same time, the martial spirit fire began smelting all the cultivation techniques and secret skills that Su Zimo had browsed through over the years. Be it the immortal, Buddhist, fiend or even demon cultivation techniques, they were all smelted by the martial spirit fire. The cultivation techniques of Daming Monastery and Fahua Monastery. The Void Thunder Manual. The Sea Calming Manual and Tidal Manual. The Mystic Classic of the 12 Demon Kings of the Great Wilderness. The 30-odd inheritances in the Stone Statue Cemetery. The endless cultivation techniques were all contained by the martial Tao furnace as it tempered, deduced and comprehended continuously, infusing all the obscurities and essence of those cultivation techniques into the martial Tao true body. The terrifying thing about the martial Tao furnace was that there was no limit to it. As long as the prime body obtained enough cultivation techniques, he could fuse them into the martial Tao furnace and refine them to become a power he could control. In other words, the power of the prime body would increase with every secret skill smelted. Furthermore, under the continuous refinement of the martial spirit fire, his martial Tao true body would become stronger, more terrifying and limitless. What was even more frightening was that the prime body was only in control of a single martial spirit fire right now. As his mastery of flames increased, the might of the martial Tao furnace would naturally increase as well. Of course, not all flames were qualified to be used to burn the martial Tao furnace. To smelt 100 sutras and burn the martial Tao furnace to forge the martial Tao true body, one had to be the strongest flame in the world. The martial spirit fire was merely the first. Now that the path of cultivation was determined, the prime body heaved a sigh of relief and continued cultivating. The martial Tao furnace had just been formed and was fragile and weak. It required a long time to smelt the sutras and dermic arts. At the same time, the green lotus true body had already rushed back to the north region from the middle continent. Su Zimo was finally relieved when he sensed the condition of his prime body. At that moment, Suzimo had already consumed the great essence creation elixir and his cultivation realm had climbed to the late-stage Dharma characteristic realm. With his return to the north region this time round, he was prepared to enter seclusion in Ethereal Peak. Although this trip to the middle continent was short, he had gained quite a bit from the consecutive battles. He was prepared to break through to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm as soon as possible with this seclusion. Right now, his 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics had already grown to a height of 89 feet. He was only a step away from a supreme Dharma characteristic as well. Of course, a breakthrough to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm was only one of his motives for his seclusion this time round. Suzimo had another question. Was a 90 feet supreme Dharma characteristic truly the limit? Chapter 1287, Death of a Patriarch. Chapter 1287, Death of a Patriarch. The cultivation world was not exactly peaceful during this period of time. The Grand Primordium ancient temple in the Middle Continent as well as the death of Dao Lord Cloud Rain and a conjoint body mighty figure of Sword Sect caused quite a stir. After Immortal Sword returned to Sword Sect, he released the news that Dao Lord Cloud Rain died in the hands of Desolate Marshal. There were naturally only benefits for Immortal Sword if he could sow grudges between Sword Sect and Desolate Marshal. This news caused quite a stir in the cultivation world. Another titular disciple had died in the hands of Desolate Marshal. Before long, more news regarding Dao Lord Desolate Marshal spread. It was no longer a secret that Desolate Marshal had formed 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. Suzimo did not take those news to heart. After returning to Ethereal Peak, he entered a long period of seclusion cultivation. Cultivation was endless and in the blink of an eye 97 years had passed. This day. A deafening bang sounded from one of Ethereal Peak's cave abodes. Boom. A terrifying aura burst forth and Ethereal Peak trembled continuously as countless rocks rolled down. Even the cultivators in seclusion were alarmed and came out one after another. Its young master. Standing in midair, Nian Qi looked at the cave abode. Before long, the skies of Ethereal Peak were filled with people densely. There were people from the Foundation establishment to Dharma characteristic realm. Could Elder Desolate Marshal have broken through again? How many years has it been? Elder Desolate Marshal's talent is way too terrifying. I've been stuck at the late-stage Dharma characteristic realm for 1,000 years but I haven't improved at all. How can you compare to Elder Desolate Marshal? In Ethereal Peak, Suzimo had long been designated as an elder by the old immortal Crane. Most of the cultivators who joined Ethereal Peak came because they had heard of the many legends of Dao Lord Desolate Marshal. Furthermore, Suzimo had once spread half of the Martial Sutra throughout the entire world. Desolate Marshal was the most respected character among everyone who cultivated the martial Dao. It was Desolate Marshal who gave them, mortals without spirit roots, a chance to break free from the shackles of fate. They could no longer be threatened by fiend demons or trampled by cultivators. The vibration lasted for a long time before subsiding. A moment later, a figure appeared at the entrance of the cave abode. Green robes and black hair. It was Dao Lord Desolate Marshal, Suzimo. Congratulations. Congratulations. In midair, many Ethereal Peak cultivators cupped their fists in congratulation. Suzimo nodded with a smile. Young Master, the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking is about to begin soon. You've already broken through to the perfected Dharma characteristic realm and you'll definitely be the top of the Dharma characteristic ranking. Nianqi smiled. She possessed the bloodline of the god race and cultivated at an extremely fast speed. Right now, she was already at the late-stage Dharma characteristic realm and was only half a step away from perfected Dharma characteristic. The fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking. Suzimo muttered softly. Suddenly, he sensed something and his expression changed as he looked to the west. His expression changed as he opened his mouth slightly with a hint of pain and reluctance in his eyes. What's wrong, young master? Sensing the change in Suzimo's expression, Nianqi asked softly. Sigh. Suzimo sighed. I'll be making a trip to the Dragon Burial Valley. Before his sentence was finished, he transformed into a golden streak of light and vanished above Ethereal Peak. Bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Descending, Suzimo arrived before the old temple and pushed open the battered temple door. Monk Yuan Bei sat in a lotus position facing the front of the hall and looked at Su Zimo with a benevolent smile. "You're here, Master." With a sorrowful expression, Su Zimo strode forward and knelt before Monk Yuan Bei. "Child, there's no need for that." Reaching out with his skinny palm, Monk Yuan Bei caressed Su Zimo's forehead and said gently, "Everyone dies. I've lived for close to 100,000 years and have seen and experienced too much. It's enough." Monk Yuan Bei was at the end of his lifespan. "Master, look. The Mingwang prayer beads are complete." Su Zimo removed the complete Mingwang prayer beads hurriedly and placed it in front of Monk Yuan Bei. "That's great." Monk Yuan Bei nodded with a relieved expression. There were no regrets, reluctance or longing in Monk Yuan Bei's eyes, they were calm as water. "I heard that you've already formed 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. How strong are they? Have you cultivated a supreme Dharma characteristic yet? Remember to visit Ming Zhen at Dipankara Monastery in the South region if you have the chance. I wonder how he's doing." Monk Yuan Bei chatted with Su Zimo about trivial matters without any hint of melancholy. Gradually he went silent. The earth did not quake nor were there any phenomena. Monk Yuan Bei passed away in peace. He still had a benevolent and warm smile on his face. However, his wise eyes would never open again. Although this renowned patriarch had a lifespan of 100,000 years, he still could not escape the sands of time and passed away here. Swoosh! The sound of chains sounded from the backyard. A tall and mighty figure walked over with scarlet hair that burned like flames. The red-headed ghost did not appear before Monk Yuan Bei's passing. It was not because the red-headed ghost had any resentment towards Monk Yuan Bei. On the contrary, the red-headed ghost and Monk Yuan Bei had a deep relationship. Su Zimo understood that the red-headed ghost merely did not wish to see Monk Yuan Bei pass away personally and experience that sadness of parting. "Now that the old monk is gone, it's time for me to leave as well." The red-headed ghost did not make a fuss and sighed in disappointment. In truth, the chains on his body had long shattered and he was not the culprit behind the catastrophe of Great Qian. He could have left a long time ago. However, he chose to remain here until Monk Yuan Bei passed away. "Let's bury him here," the red-headed ghost said. Su Zimo nodded and carried Monk Yuan Bei's corpse to the cemetery at the back of the hall to bury the latter. He placed all the ancient books in the old temple into his storage bag, prepared to bring them back to Ethereal Peak. The skies above the Dragon Burial Valley. "You're going to return to the dragon race?" Su Zimo asked. The red-headed ghost nodded. "Without my protection, you have to be careful in the future and not be reckless. Time to go." The red-headed ghost waved it off and turned to leave. All of a sudden, he frowned slightly and turned around slowly, gazing at the void not far away with a slightly focused and pensive expression. "What's wrong?" Su Zimo asked instinctively. "Nothing much. I seem to have sensed something earlier on." The red-headed ghost shook his head and murmured, "I might be neurotic after staying at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley for too long." With that, he turned and left, disappearing above the Dragon Burial Valley before long. Su Zimo stood at the edge of the Dragon Burial Valley for a long time before sighing deeply and turning to leave. Not long after he left, the void not far away from the Dragon Burial Valley distorted and a figure appeared. The red-headed ghost was right, there was indeed someone there. However, that person even managed to avoid his detection. The person wore a wide white robe and his black hair covered most of his face, revealing only one eye. He looked at the Dragon Burial Valley with a conflicted expression. After standing for a long time, the figure bowed deeply in the direction of the Dragon Burial Valley and turned to leave as well. Chapter 1288 Primordial 6 Races. Chapter 1288 Primordial 6 Races. West region of Tianhuang mainland. Everywhere that can be seen, the desert was vast and uninhabited. Occasionally there would be sand dunes without any signs of life. In the cultivation world there were many sections. Most of them were located in the Middle Continent, East region, North region and South region. However, very few cultivators set up their sects in the West region. In the depths of the West region, in a desert in the extreme west, hundreds of figures stood with powerful auras. Among them, there were even dozens of figures whose auras fused with the entire world. Although their auras varied individually, they exuded a terrifying might. The dozens of figures were all conjoint body mighty figures. The others were also Dharma characteristic Dao lords. The most terrifying thing was that most of the hundreds of figures were foreign living beings. Some of them were ugly and had green faces and bared fangs. Their noses were facing the skies and their fingers and toes had sharp nails that were curved and shone coldly. The living beings were tall and had black skin. They had gigantic pitch-black meat wings on their backs that were dozens of feet wide when spread open. None of those living beings were human, they were more like malevolent ghosts from hell. It was one of the primordial 9 races, the Rakshasa race. This was a race that was even more terrifying than the malevolent ghosts of hell. Although some of them were in human form, they wore green robes and had ghastly green eyes. They exuded a sinister aura that looked extremely eerie. One of the primordial 9 races, the witch race. Some of them were neither human nor demon and looked like plants that took root in the depths of the desert, waving dozens of scarlet vines. Every single vine had a blood-colored gourd. The most terrifying thing was that at the top of the vines was a human face. It had no eyes and nose, only a gigantic mouth with sharp fangs that intertwined with one another and shone with a cold glint. Any living being that was devoured would be minced instantly. It was one of the primordial 9 races, the blood vine race. There were others that resembled crows. However, they were extremely massive with golden feathers that burned with similarly colored flames and 3 legs beneath them. The void around them were distorted from the heat. One of the primordial 9 races, the golden crow race. There were also some cultivators with golden hair and blue eyes. The men were handsome and tall while the women were graceful and charming. It was clear that they were from the god race. Some other figures were similar to humans. However, there was a blood scar on their foreheads that resembled an eye. One of the primordial 9 races, the heavenly eye race. Among the hundreds of figures, 6 of the primordial 9 races arrived. The witch, Rakshasa, god, golden crow, bloodvine and heavenly eye races. Ever since the ancient war, the primordial 9 races resided in a corner and rarely set foot in Tianhuang mainland. They had never made such a huge move. Now, 6 of them had all appeared and the weakest were Dharma characteristics with dozens of conjoint body mighty figures among them. The 6 races had activated such a massive formation just for a terrifying living being sprawled on the ground not far away. The living being was 100 feet tall and was pitch black with scales all over its body. However, its tail was purple and its tailbone was sharp as though it could penetrate everything. If Su Zimo was here, he would definitely recognize that this was Night Spirit in his true form. At that moment, Night Spirit's aura was weak and he was filled with injuries all over. He was already unconscious and the purple flames beneath his feet had already extinguished. Right now, Night Spirit was only at the Dharma characteristic realm and could kill conjoint body mighty figures without even transforming into his true form. In a one-on-one fight, he could even kill people of the primordial 9 races in his true form. However, no matter how strong Night Spirit was, he could not defend against the encirclement of so many ferocious races. All these years he fought and escaped while hiding everywhere. In the end, he was suppressed here by the experts of the 6 races. It's all thanks to your collaboration that we're able to capture that beast this time round. Wuxia looked around and nodded to express his gratitude. This beast can really escape. A conjoint body Rakshasa named Feng Tian cursed with a hateful expression. It's been more than 90 years since we started attacking him. As expected of a taboo race. Over the years, more than 10 conjoint body mighty figures of our 6 races have died to this beast. A god race being harumphed coldly with killing intent in his eyes. This time round, the 6 races sent experts to kill Night Spirit and they only succeeded today. They had also paid an extremely high price all these years. More than 10 conjoint body mighty figures of the 6 races had died in the hands of Night Spirit. There were even more than 100 Dharma characteristic Dao lords. Third Prince, you came all the way from the East Sea Peng Lai to assist us in killing this fiend. You're truly much stronger than the Dragon, Barbarian and Kuan races. Wuxia looked at a 3D golden crow not far away and nodded. Well said, well said. The third prince of the golden crow transformed into his human form and was a handsome young man. The fact that this beast is still alive is a huge threat to the primordial 9 races. No one can stay out of it. What a pity. Wuxia sneered. The Dragon, Barbarian and Kuan races don't think that way. They chose to stand by idly. The Dragon race looks strong on the surface but they're weak on the inside. The Barbarian race is merely a bunch of fools with strong limbs and simple minds. As for the Kuan race, Fufu, They must be scared silly after many of them were killed by this beast in the Primordial War. A heavenly eye race being said coldly. Among the group of living beings, there was a human with a wide Daoist robe, a Confucian crown on his head and a folding fan in his hands. There was a faint, mysterious smile on that person's face the entire time. Even when he stood together with the experts of the Primordial 9 races, his aura was not inferior. He was Heavenly Secrets of Enigma Palace. After exchanging pleasantries with the Golden Crow Third Prince and the others, Wuxia turned around and nodded at Heavenly Secrets. Of course, it's all thanks to Heavenly Secrets' divination that we're able to hold this beast here. The Primordial 9 races had an innate sense of superiority towards humans. After all, humans were born weak and were once the lowest leveled race that they had enslaved through history. Furthermore, an ancient war broke out between both parties. Although the 6 races relied on Heavenly Secrets' divination to hunt down Night Spirit all these years, most of them did not take Heavenly Secrets seriously. Even as Wuxia expressed gratitude to Heavenly Secrets, the other races had cold expressions and did not react. It's nothing much. Heavenly Secrets said indifferently, this beast is sharp and alert. I took a gamble in the end as well, guessing that there was a high chance it would escape to that direction. Heavenly Secrets pointed to the west. That was the extreme west. From afar, one could see rows of mountain ranges that towered into the clouds. If one focused their gaze, they would vaguely see that the mountain range was filled with endless corpses. Some of the corpses were not rotten and retained their original forms. Their bodies were long and more than 10,000 feet long. Lying on the mountain range, they looked like crouching dragons. To be precise, those were dragon skeletons. A dragon skeleton that was more than 10,000 feet long. A Dharma characteristic dragon was only dozens of feet tall. What about a dragon skeleton that was 10,000 feet long? Chapter 1289 Scheme. Chapter 1289, Scheme. Some of the corpses were in the shape of birds with wings that were more than 1,000 feet long. There were 3 legs beneath them that were golden. The Golden Crow Third Prince's face turned paler when he caught sight of those corpses. In the endless mountain range there were all sorts of corpses. Apart from the Primordial 9 races, there were countless unknown living beings. A torrential malevolent aura emanated from that side and one would jitter with a single glance. The experts of the 6 races were prideful. However, their auras weakened when they looked in that direction as they averted their gazes with fearful expressions. There were 9 forbidden grounds in Tianhuang mainland that humans did not dare to step foot into. However, the endless mountain range in the distance was the forbidden ground of the Primordial 9 races. Extreme West, Kunlun Ruins. A god race being named Han Ling remarked with lingering fear, "It's lucky that we stopped that beast in advance. If he had escaped there, we might not have been able to capture him." Wuxia's expression was terrible as well as he urged, "Let's go. It's better for us to leave this place as soon as possible." Although there was still a long way to go before they arrived at the Kunlun Ruins, the 6 races were already feeling uncomfortable. How should we deal with this beast? Should we kill it directly? The Rakshasa, Feng Tian, revealed his bloodthirsty fangs and said murderously. A heavenly eye race being nodded. I think that's fine. Killing him will eliminate all future troubles lest anything unexpected happens. No, we can't. A blood vine on the ground transformed into a human and shook its head resolutely. The blood of this beast contains immense power. If we were to kill it, the blood would go stale and the power within would weaken too much. That's right. God Han Ling nodded. This beast is filled with treasures from head to toe. It's a little hasty to kill him just like that. There's no way he can break free after I trap him with the god race's heavenly god lock. At that time, we'll capture him back alive and discuss how we should deal with him. Sure. Wuxia's eyes flickered as he nodded in agreement. Every single item on Night Spirit's body, be it scales, fangs, claws or blood, were utmost treasures of the universe. The 6 races had their own agendas and would naturally not let a single race possess them all. God Han Ling slapped his storage bag and withdrew a shimmering golden chain. There were 5 diamond iron hoops on the chains and sharp spikes were embedded in the inner circle of the hoops. There were reverse hooks that intertwined extremely sharply. The pupils of Wuxia and the others constricted slightly when they saw the heavenly god lock. The heavenly god lock was the most famous weapon of the god race and even the Primordial 9 races would not be able to break free from it. The spikes on the heavenly god lock's iron hoops could penetrate flesh with ease and were embedded deeply. Furthermore, the spikes were hollow and could suck blood continuously, causing living beings trapped by the heavenly god lock to never recover their blood chi. The moment one's blood chi recovered, it would be sucked in by the spikes on the iron hoops. God Han Ling threw the heavenly god lock in his hands towards Night Spirit. Splash! The heavenly god lock descended and coiled around Night Spirit instantly. The immense godly power augmented and restricted Night Spirit's body as his true form dissipated and took on human form. Snap! Snap! The 5 iron hoops locked Night Spirit's arms, legs and neck instantly, piercing deeply into his flesh. Night Spirit grunted and frowned with a pained expression. Ha 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 ha! Rakshasa Feng Tian was excited and burst into laughter. Little beast, let's see how you can maintain your cockiness. Let's see how you can escape now. Ah. Right then, Heavenly Secrets' expression changed when he saw Night Spirit in human form and he murmured softly, "It's him?" "What? You've seen him before?" Noticing the change in Heavenly Secrets' expression, Wuxia turned and asked. Heavenly Secrets nodded. His name is Night Spirit and he has appeared many times in the cultivation world with terrifying combat strength. However, he has never revealed his true form. He even has a bosom friend and the cultivation world once thought that he was the latter's spirit beast. That's impossible. A heavenly eye race being shook his head. Who could have subdued the taboo race? Heavenly Secrets looked at everyone from the Rakshasa and God race and smiled mysteriously. Back in the intermediate ancient battlefield, he even joined forces with that man and buried both your races in Myriad Phenomenon City. Rakshasa Feng Tian's expression changed as he barked coldly, "It's that man. What's his name again?" Dao Lord Desolate Martial. Heavenly Secrets said slowly, "Right now he created the martial Dao and allowed mortals without spirit roots to cultivate as well. His combat strength is terrifying and he killed many titular disciples of super sects and condensed 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. He's extremely famous." 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. Everyone from the 6 races frowned. The fact that Su Zimo had conjured 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics caused a huge stir in the cultivation world. However, the 6 races were merely surprised. For example, Wuxia, God Han Ling and Rakshasa Feng Tian were all conjoint body mighty figures. They did not even care if Su Zimo could conjure 10 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics, let alone 3. How strong were conjoint body mighty figures of the 6 races? Even half-martial ancestors of the human race would not dare to provoke them. Where is he now? Rakshasa Feng Tian asked murderously, "I'll make a move to kill that lad right now." Heavenly Secrets shook his head. Desolate Martial has a Mahayana Patriarch backing him. You might not be able to hurt him if you head over now. Furthermore, this person's movement technique is extremely fast. It'll be difficult to kill him if he escapes with all his might. No matter how fast he is, he can't be faster than us Rakshasas. Rakshasa Feng Tian harumphed coldly. Although that was what he claimed, he did not persist. While he was fearless against half-martial ancestors, he was still wary of Mahayana patriarchs. At the Mahayana realm, one would have comprehended divine powers. That sort of power was not something conjoint bodies can fight against. Heavenly Secrets continued, "Furthermore, if Desolate Martial is alarmed and goes into hiding, I won't be able to divine his location." "You can't divine it." Wuxia frowned. Even for the taboo race, Heavenly Secrets could divine a rough area. Yet, he was unable to divine a single puny human. Heavenly Secrets had a calm expression. An expert once altered Desolate Martial's fate. He's shrouded by a layer of fog and I can't divine him. What should we do then? Rakshasa Feng Tian said coldly, "Desolate Martial is someone I definitely have to kill." "That's right. That lad once killed my clansman. I won't let him off either." The god Han Ling said slowly as well. The Golden Crow Third Prince smiled sinisterly. "You guys have managed to intrigue me. I'm keen on meeting this Desolate Martial. Fellow Daoist Heavenly Secrets, do you have any grand plan?" Wuxia asked. "It can't be considered a grand plan, merely an open scheme." Heavenly Secrets pointed at Night Spirit not far away and smiled. The once-in-a-thousand-year fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking is about to begin. At that time, Desolate Martial will definitely appear despite knowing that there's danger if we use this beast as bait. Given Desolate Martial's character, he'll definitely try and save that beast. At that time, countless sects and factions will naturally attack to kill him. Everyone, all we have to do is wait by the sidelines and enjoy the show. The Golden Crow third prince clapped and laughed. Interesting, interesting. Chapter 1290 Taboo Race. Chapter 1290, Taboo Race. Nothing will go wrong, right? A heavenly eye race being frowned with a cold expression. Absolutely impossible. God Han Ling waved it off and declared proudly, this heavenly godlock was given to me by an elder of the god race. Even a Dharma treasure can't damage it. The weapons used by Mahayana patriarchs were infused with the power of divine powers and could be called Dharma treasures. Heavenly secrets nodded as well. Everyone, don't worry. The primordial 9 races are not the only ones concerned about the birth of this taboo. Our human race won't let it off either. Taboos are the enemies of the 10,000 races. At that time, whoever dares to protect them will have to die with them. Although Heavenly Secrets said that with a smile, there was a cold killing intent. Ethereal Peak. Ever since Monk Yuan Bei passed away in meditation, Su Zimo had returned to this place. However, he felt uneasy recently as though something big was about to happen. It was an instinct and definitely not a coincidence. However, he had no clue as to what it was. This day, Su Zimo was meditating in his cave abode when his heart skipped a beat. Waving his sleeves, the door to his cave abode opened slowly and a messenger spirit crane flew in. Su Zimo received it. Xiaoning? The spirit crane gave off a familiar aura. It was Xiaoning. Brother, I've missed you. How have you been recently? The fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking is about to begin. Are you going to join? We'll be able to meet then. At that point, Su Zimo smiled and continued reading. Have you seen Night Spirit all these years? 90 years ago he suddenly left my side and disappeared. He hasn't returned since. The day he left, he had a strange expression as though something was amiss. If he's with you, please reply and let me know. At that point, Su Zimo fell into deep thought. Night Spirit was gone. Under normal circumstances, given Night Spirit's combat strength, it was nothing much for him to be missing for 100 years. There was probably nobody in Tianhuang mainland who could injure him. Even if he could not defeat them, he could escape. What could have happened to Night Spirit? Could Night Spirit's background have been exposed? Immediately, Su Zimo shook his head. Night Spirit was so cautious, and even in front of Su Zimo, he merely revealed his true form once. How could he have been exposed? Right then, another spirit crane flew in from outside the cave abode. Su Zimo received it and took a look. This spirit crane was from Lin Xuanji. Don't go for the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking. Don't go. There was not much information on the spirit crane and there were only a few words. It was a clear warning. Furthermore, it seemed like it was written in a hurry. Could the super sects have deduced that my master has passed away and are prepared to join forces to kill me in the Dharma characteristic ranking? Su Zimo quickly thought of that possibility. All these years, the reason why Glass Palace, Zephyr Thunder Palace and Sword Sect endured him was because they were wary of Monk Yuan Bei. Now that Monk Yuan Bei had passed away, it was only logical that those super sects were tempted. Su Zimo sneered internally. Since that was the case, he would not take part in the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking. The danger of the Dharma characteristic ranking this time round was definitely unimaginable if it could prompt Lin Xuanji into sending such a reminder. Just as he was pondering, a figure descended from outside the door. It was Nian Qi. Young master, there's news of the Dharma characteristic ranking. She came to Su Zimo's side. It said that the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking this time round is still in the middle continent. However, I heard that it's different from the past. Apart from some specified rewards, the 72 cultivators on the Dharma characteristic ranking also have the chance to drink taboo blood. Taboo blood? Su Zimo asked casually without thinking too much. Nian Qi shook her head. I don't know either. I think Enigma Palace joined forces with some super sects and captured an extremely terrifying taboo living being of the primordial era. It said that every single drop of blood from this taboo contains an unimaginable power. Su Zimo's expression changed. At the same time, in the Dragon Bone Valley, the dragon true body that was in seclusion was awakened by a series of hurried knocks. Su Zimo was already the young master of the dragon race and reigned over the 5 lineages. Unless there was something extremely pressing, the dragon race would definitely not disturb him. Without hesitation he got up and left the dragon lair. "Young master, the elders invited you for a meeting in the Grand Hall." An illumination dragon bowed respectfully. Su Zimo nodded and leaped towards the Grand Hall in the central region. In the past few years of seclusion cultivation, his dragon true body cultivated at an extremely fast speed with the help of the 3 innate divine powers and was already at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm. Of course, breaking through from the perfected Dharma characteristic realm to the conjoint body realm required not only an opportunity, but also a long period of consolidation. Su Zimo arrived at the meeting hall and looked up. There were more than 10 elders sitting in the hall. Not only were the grand elders of the Illumination Dragon lineage present, the grand elders of the other 4 lineages were present as well. What's with the crowd? Su Zimo lamented internally. What happened to alarm so many elders? Long Imo, have a seat. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder waved his hand, indicating for Su Zimo to sit for the meeting. As the young master of the dragon race, his status was on par with the elders present and was even above some ordinary dragon elders. "The reason we called for you here today is to inform you of something," the Illumination Dragon Grand Elder said. "A taboo of the primordial era has a remnant bloodline alive. Furthermore, it was captured alive by 6 of the primordial 9 races." When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. The first thing that came to mind was Night Spirit. However, he maintained his composure and took a deep breath. "Grand Elder, please explain what a taboo it is." The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder reminisced and said slowly, "In the primordial era, the 10,000 races reigned and the hierarchy was strict. It was even crueler than now. Our primordial 9 races reigned over Tianhuang mainland back in the primordial era. However, there's another type of living being above us, the taboo race." True enough. Night Spirit's bloodline was indeed stronger and more terrifying than the primordial 9 races. It was no wonder why Night Spirit dared to eat the dragon egg the moment he entered the Dragon Bone Valley and did not hesitate at all. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder continued, "The taboo race is extremely special and the chances of them being born are extremely low. Their bloodlines are rare and only 1 or 2 exist in each generation. Among the taboos we currently know is the Dragon Phoenix. The Dragon Phoenix does not only possess the bloodline of the dragon race, it also possesses the bloodline of the Divine Phoenix. Extremely strong with torrential combat strength, it's a true taboo of the primordial era." At that point, the Illumination Dragon Grand Elder looked at Su Zimo deeply. He continued after a brief pause, "The Kuan Peng is also a taboo. Of the primordial 9 races, one of them is the Kuan race. The Kuan Peng race is much stronger than the Kuan race. It can turn into fish and devour the oceans for thousands of kilometers as well as turn into a bird that possesses the power of extreme yin and yang as it soars through the world." This was the first time Su Zimo had heard of some of these things. He did not interrupt and continued listening. Although Night Spirit was from a taboo race, he was definitely not a Dragon Phoenix or Kuan Peng. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder said slowly, "There's another lineage of the taboo race known as the Ho. Chapter 1291, Decision. Chapter 1291, Decision. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder said, "Ho, the god of massacre of the primordial era, stood at the top of all living beings and the primordial 9 races were its food. It was no wonder why he was referred to as a taboo by the primordial 9 races." Su Zimo lamented internally, "There's no mistake. Night Spirit should be a Ho." It stood to reason why Night Spirit did not like to eat any spirit beasts that Monkey and the others captured back when he had just hatched. Instead, he displayed an unprecedented interest when he came to the Dragon Bone Valley and saw a dragon egg. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder continued, "Of course, because the 3 taboos are rare, there isn't a colony of them and they naturally don't have the strength and energy to rule over Tianhuang mainland." Su Zimo nodded. In the primordial era, the primordial 9 races were still the ones who ruled over Tianhuang mainland. However, there were 3 great taboo living beings above the primordial 9 races that possessed the power to kill them. What was with that battle in the primordial era? Su Zimo asked. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder had a conflicted expression. The primordial era was the most glorious era of Tianhuang mainland and the 3 major taboos existed. However, the Dragon Phoenix has a blood relation with the dragon race and is naturally closer to the dragon race. The Kuan Peng is closer to the Kuan race as well. The Ho is the only one that is always alone and aloof, distant from any single race. The Ho was savage and killed the primordial 9 races without any reservations. Finally, the Ho incurred the wrath of the Dragon Phoenix and Kunpeng, who then brought the primordial 9 races to fight against it. The battle was extremely tragic and corpses were strewn everywhere like mountains. Countless living beings of the primordial 9 races were killed and almost all the 10,000 races were implicated. Not many of them survived. Su Zimo was silent. There was indeed a reason why houses were called taboos. An existence like that possessed the power to destroy the 10,000 races. Who wouldn't be afraid? Even with the Dragon Phoenix and Kunpeng, the primordial 9 races suffered immense losses. It was obvious how tragic that battle was. There was nothing right or wrong about that battle. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder lamented as well. Later on, because of that battle, the 2 taboos, the Dragon Phoenix and Kunpeng, were severely injured as well. They did not manage to transcend the tribulations to become immortals and died after expending their lifespans. The Dragon Phoenix was filled with regrets before it died. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder nodded. That's precisely the reason why we hesitated for a long time before deciding not to join the hunt when we heard that the bloodline of a Ho had appeared. However, even without our participation in the encirclement, the Ho did not manage to escape and was captured by the 6 races that went. Pondering for a moment, Su Zimo said in a seemingly casual manner, "If we're able to save that Ho this time round, he won't have any feud with the dragon race after he grows up." "Impossible," the Blue Dragon Grand Elder said resolutely. The other Dragon Elders shook their heads as well. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder said, "The primordial 9 races and the 10,000 races possess an innate fear towards taboo living beings. If their identities and bloodlines are exposed before they grow, there's only a single outcome for them: death. The primordial 9 races, the 10,000 races of Tianhuang mainland and human cultivators will never let a single taboo grow again. The fact that the dragon race did not attack has already incurred the wrath of the other races. If we dare to try and save this taboo now, the other races will definitely be enraged and turn on us. It'll be a calamity that might lead to extermination. Anyone who harbors any motives about this taboo at a moment like this will have to die." Su Zimo was silent. Actually, what he said earlier was to test the reaction of the dragon race. Initially, he was wondering if he could save Night Spirit with the help of the dragon race. Looking at the reactions of the elders of the dragon race right now, that was impossible. Not only that, if he revealed any intention of saving Night Spirit, all the elders of the dragon race would definitely dissuade him and even detain him in the Dragon Bone Valley. At that thought, Su Zimo went silent. No matter what others thought or what taboo Night Spirit was, he had to head to the Middle Continent and do everything he could to save Night Spirit. At the same time, his Dragon True Body sensed the news from his Green Lotus True Body. The 2 true bodies were telepathic and made a decision almost instantly. The Martial Dao True Body had just entered the Martial Spirit realm and was equivalent to a nascent soul. There was no need to alarm it because its strength was insufficient. This time round, his Dragon True Body and Green Lotus True Body had to move together. This trip to the Middle Continent would definitely be filled with unprecedented dangers for Su Zimo. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he would most likely die. Some super sects bore grudges with him to begin with. If he dared to save Night Spirit despite the universal condemnation, it would be equivalent to pushing himself to a dead end and making the entire world his enemy. Even so, Su Zimo did not hesitate at all. To him, Night Spirit was not a primordial taboo, that was his sworn brother and family who had followed him for many years. He would definitely not sit idly by the sidelines. He would not hesitate even if the entire world was his enemy. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder said, "We called you here today not because of this taboo, but because we want to remind you of something." "What?" Su Zimo asked. The Grand Elders of the 5 lineages exchanged glances before the Illumination Dragon Grand Elder turned to Su Zimo and said slowly, "We have a hunch that there's a high chance you might grow into another taboo, the Dragon Phoenix." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. However, he quickly came to a realization. He had the bloodline of a dragon and the divine phoenix bone within his body. If the 2 bloodlines were to fuse, there was a chance that he could become a new taboo, the Dragon Phoenix. Back when you underwent the ancestral dragon's baptism and awakened your innate divine powers, many phenomenons appeared. The only person who could intimidate the ancestral dragon and defeat the bloodline of a 5-clawed divine dragon is probably a dragon phoenix. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder sighed immediately. Of course this might require an opportunity. I don't know either. After all, you can't even conjure a complete dragon body right now. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder said, if you're able to become a dragon phoenix in the future, you must be careful not to expose your bloodline and identity before you advance to the ancestor realm. Otherwise you will end up with the same outcome as this hoe. At that time, even the dragon race won't be able to protect you. Su Zimo nodded. Turning into a dragon phoenix was way too far for him right now. He might not be able to wait till then either. In this Dharma characteristic ranking competition, the Dragon True Body and Green Lotus True Body were not facing Dharma characteristic paragons, but all the sects, factions and 6 primordial races. It was also possible for the 2 true bodies to die on the spot. This time round it was clear that the other party had set a trap. Not only did they want to kill Night Spirit, they wanted to kill him as well. Who knew what sort of a trap they were setting up? The only unknown variable that was advantageous for Su Zimo was probably his Dragon True Body. Suddenly, Su Zimo said, I intend to experience the Dharma characteristic ranking this time round personally. What for? The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder frowned and was instantly alarmed. Su Zimo said, I haven't seen what the 3 great taboos look like. This is a rare opportunity. How can I miss it? Elders, don't worry. I'll hide my identity and watch the show from the side. There won't be any danger. Chapter 1292 Killing Intent. Chapter 1292 Killing Intent. Middle Continent, Heaven and Earth Valley. The name of Heaven and Earth meant that the valley was special. The Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic ranking that was held once every 1,000 years would be held in this valley. The valley was extremely vast and spanned thousands of kilometers. When it was time, Dharma characteristic paragons from all over Tianhuang mainland would gather here to fight for the 72 spots on the Dharma characteristic ranking. Being listed on the Dharma characteristic ranking was not only for honor, there were also huge rewards. Similar to the phenomenon ranking, the Dharma characteristic ranking was hosted by Enigma Palace. As the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking approached, the number of cultivators in the vicinity of Heaven and Earth Valley increased and it became livelier. I heard that Fairy Luo Shui of Snowdrift Valley obtained an ancient inheritance and formed the Ice Spirit Dermic body. She has a chance of making it to the top 10 of the Dharma characteristic ranking. Pang Yu of Overlord Palace is not weak either after condensing the Tenyama body that has been lost for many years. I heard that the Demoness of Pure Maiden sect obtained an ancient inheritance in the Dao inheritance ground and condensed a mystic maiden dermic body. Although she's not at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm right now, her combat strength is shocking. In my opinion, there's no doubt about who will be the top of the Dharma characteristic ranking this time round. I heard that Dao Lord Desolate Marshal has condensed 3 Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics that are 87 feet tall. He's definitely the top of the Dharma characteristic ranking. Indeed, I don't think anyone can compare to Dao Lord Desolate Marshal. Before the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking began, many cultivators were already discussing. By the way, do you guys know what that primordial taboo is? I'm not sure. It seems to be an extremely terrifying living being from the primordial era that's comparable to the primordial 9 races. That's amazing. I heard that it took quite a bit of effort to capture that taboo alive. Look, the cultivators of Sword Sect are here. Some cultivators pointed into the distance and exclaimed, Sword Sect is really early this time round. As time passed, various major sects, factions and super sects appeared one after another and descended in Heaven and Earth Valley. This time round, more than 10 ethereal peak cultivators arrived in the Middle Continent under the lead of the old immortal Crane. In Ethereal Peak, Nian Qi had the highest chance of fighting for a spot on the Dharma characteristic ranking. Young Master left long ago. Why hasn't he appeared yet? The moment Nian Qi arrived at Heaven and Earth Valley, she searched everywhere but could not find Su Zimo. He must be delayed by something, don't worry. The old immortal Crane smiled. Before long, cultivators of the 4 unorthodox groups arrived. For the Dharma characteristic ranking this time round, some super sects would be led by conjoint body mighty figures to lead their disciples. It was the same for the 4 unorthodox groups. Right at the front were 4 conjoint body mighty figures. The most prominent person was a middle-aged man in scarlet robes from 100 Refinement sect. He had a dignified appearance and his eyes were bright, as though they were burning with flames. Although this mighty figure was only at the early stage conjoint body realm, his aura overwhelmed most of the conjoint body mighty figures present. This was the reborn Extreme Fire. Shangguanzi of Thousand Crane Sect stood beside Extreme Fire, looking extremely close to him. Behind her was the titular disciple of Thousand Crane Sect, Fairy Thousand Crane. That was Lung Ro, who left Ethereal Peak. Xiaoning and Ji Qingtian of Elixir Yang Sect arrived as well. Little Fatty of Tomb Sect was among the crowd too. All of them ran over to Ethereal Peak to catch up with the old immortal crane. Nian Qi, my brother isn't here? Xiaoning asked softly. Nian Qi replied, I'm not sure. He set off a long time ago, but he shouldn't have arrived yet. Xiaoning nodded with a worried expression. Do you know what is this primordial taboo thing? Has anyone seen it before? I'm not sure. Enigma Palace has hidden it extremely well and no one has seen what a primordial taboo looks like. Nian Qi shook her head. Xiaoning sighed and the scene of Night Spirit leaving flashed through her mind. As time passed by, the 9 immortal sects, 7 fiend sects and 6 Buddhist monasteries were all present. Successors of the 5 heretical doctrines arrived as well. Members of the 3 aristocratic families and 2 islands did not appear still. What? What are you thinking about? When Shangguanzi saw Extreme Fire frowning in deep thought, as though something was bothering him, she could not help but ask gently. Something is not right. Extreme Fire frowned and looked toward Sword Sect, Zephyr Thunder Palace and the other super sections. The lineup of these sects for the Dharma characteristic ranking this time round is a little too grand. Normally speaking, the Dharma characteristic Dao Lords were the main characters in the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking. At most, the major sects and factions would send 1 or 2 conjoint body mighty figures to lead the teams. That was enough. However, there were already more than 30 conjoint body mighty figures in Sword Sect this time round. It was the same for Zephyr Thunder Palace, Glass Palace, Heavenly Dipper Sect and Chaos Essence Sect as well. Indeed, it's a little strange. Shangguanzi nodded with a confused expression. Extreme Fire swept his gaze across Sword Sect's camp with a burning gaze and said slowly, furthermore, have you noticed that there are some conjoint body mighty figures in these sects that don't seem like they're from those sects? What do you mean by that? Shangguanzi was confused. Extreme Fire said bluntly, some of them don't seem like they're human. Not human? Shangguanzi's heart skipped a beat and she instinctively thought that fiend demons had infiltrated the place. However, on second thought, she realized that fiend demons couldn't be powerful enough to hide from the conjoint body mighty figures present. If it weren't fiend demons, could it be? You're referring to the primordial 9 races? Shangguanzi asked softly. It's possible. Extreme Fire nodded with a grim expression. The primordial 9 races haven't stepped foot into Tianhuang mainland for so many years. What are they trying to do by appearing in the Dharma characteristic ranking? Shangguanzi asked. I'm not sure yet. Let's wait and see. Extreme Fire said. The Dharma characteristic ranking had yet to begin. Although it seemed calm on the surface, Extreme Fire could sense the undercurrent surging beneath the calm water with killing intent everywhere, as though a tsunami was brewing. Suddenly he asked, the Dharma characteristic ranking is about to begin and Zimo isn't here yet. I didn't see him. Shangguanzi shook her head as well. On the other side, Heavenly Secrets, Immortal Sword and the others gathered and sent voice transmissions with their spirit consciousnesses. Dao Lord Desolate Marshal hasn't appeared yet. What should we do? Immortal Sword said, he might have realized the danger and won't come. Absolutely impossible. Heavenly Secrets said with a faint smile and a confident tone. Pausing for a moment, he continued, the reason why Desolate Marshal hasn't appeared is because he hasn't seen that beast. Fufu Desolate Marshal is way too cautious. If he doesn't come out, I'll force him to. Heavenly Secrets said and arrived in midair in a flash. Everyone please be silent. Heavenly Secrets pressed his hands against the air. Although his voice was neither loud nor soft, it spread to every corner of the heaven and earth valley and attracted countless gazes. The fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking is about to begin. Everyone please calm down before that. He said indifferently, in the primordial era, there was a taboo life form that was cruel and bloodthirsty, incurring the wrath of the heavens and the masses. We heard that a bloodline of that taboo had awakened in this generation, so we joined forces and captured it alive. Today, with all the cultivators of the world as witnesses, we'll kill this beast and drink its blood. Chapter 1293, A Long Wait. Chapter 1293, A Long Wait. The cultivators of Heaven and Earth Valley were densely packed as they looked around. Some of them had lost expressions while others were curious to see what the legendary taboo living being was like. Heavenly Secrets looked around as though he was searching for something. Unfortunately, Suzimo did not appear even after a while. There are too many cultivators in Heaven and Earth Valley. It'll be difficult to find Desolate Marshal if he's hiding within. Immortal Sword frowned slightly and sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness. Heavenly Secrets smiled faintly. Desolate Marshal is very cautious. I'm sure he won't appear until he sees that beast. There's no harm in that. Bring that beast out and let the cultivators of the world take a look. He looked at God Hanling behind him and nodded slightly. God Hanling smiled gently and removed a bag from his waist. He opened it and a black shadow fell out. Clang, clang. Accompanied by the sound of heavy chains, the black shadow slammed onto the ground heavily. A stir broke out amongst the crowd. Countless gazes landed on that figure. It was a black-robed young man who seemed to have lost a lot of blood chi. His face was pale and he had a pair of hands and feet. In fact, there was a gigantic iron hoop around his neck that was stained with blood. Even so, there was no pain in the black-robed young man's eyes. Instead, they were cold. What's that? Is that what a primordial taboo look like? He looks no different from us. Many cultivators were disappointed. Night Spirit. A series of exclamations sounded from the direction of Elixir Yang sect. A female cultivator was agitated and wanted to charge forward, but she was held down by a conjoint body mighty figure of Elixir Yang sect and could not move. Isn't that Fairy Elixir Yang? What's going on? Fairy Elixir Yang knows this black-robed man? Night Spirit. No wonder he looks familiar. He seems to have a close relationship with Dao Lord Desolate Marshal. Some cultivators discussed softly. Fairy Elixir Yang was Su Xiaoning. Xiaoning, don't be rash. Calm down. The Elixir Yang sect elder had a grim expression. She had lived for so long and was experienced and knowledgeable. Naturally, she could tell that the super sects had a grand lineup this time round for a specific motive and they were hostile. Anyone that stood out at this moment would have a high chance of getting themselves killed. How can I calm down? That's Night Spirit. Xiaoning teared instantly when she saw the state Night Spirit was in. Night Spirit raised his head slightly and frowned imperceptibly, seemingly in pain. That slight movement caused blood to ooze from his throat. He met Xiaoning's gaze and shook his head with all his might. That tugged at the wound and the spike dug deep into his neck once more, causing a few grisly blood to flow out slowly. Night Spirit was reminding Xiaoning not to stand out. He knew very well that there was no way he could survive now that he was in the hands of the six races. At this moment, whoever dared to stand beside him would die with him. Night Spirit, don't move first. Xiaoning cried. At that moment she had no idea what to do. She wanted to charge forward but she was restrained by the sect elder and could not move at all. She could only stand on the spot and look at Night Spirit with a twisted heart. All these years, Night Spirit had never left her side no matter where she was or what she thought. Even when she traveled through the Tianhuang North region to seek treatment, he remained by her side silently without forsaking her. If not for Night Spirit, she would have died countless times over the years. Furthermore, after so many years of interaction, the feelings between the two of them had already surpassed ordinary friendship. It was just that neither of them exposed the other. In Xiaoning's heart, Night Spirit was already a family member second only to Su Zimo. Although she had experienced many things over the years and had toughened up, she still felt powerless against such a situation and her mind was in chaos. I've got it. Extreme Fire's gaze focused and he suddenly said, that primordial taboo is most likely not their only target in this fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking. They also want Zimo. Pure Maiden Sect. Demoness Ji frowned slightly with her veil over her face. Could it be because of Zimo? She knew the relationship between Su Zimo and Night Spirit and realized that the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking was probably a huge trap. Right then, Heavenly Secret said slowly, I believe all the cultivators are puzzled as to how an ordinary person like him could be a primordial taboo. That was indeed the question on the minds of many cultivators. That's because nobody has seen the true form of that beast yet. After saying that, Heavenly Secrets tapped his finger gently and a stream of mist entered Night Spirit's body. Roar! A roar burst forth from the depths of Night Spirit's throat and his entire body began to tremble and expand. In the blink of an eye, a gigantic demon beast that was 100 feet tall and nearly 200 feet long appeared on the spot. Clang! Clang! Night Spirit struggled and howled with a torrential malevolent aura as the heavenly god Locke let out a violent sound. Pust! Many cultivators gasped. The entire crowd retreated half a step instinctively. The aura that Night Spirit emanated was way too terrifying. Cultivators of the human race would feel uncontrollable fear when they saw living beings of the primordial 9 races, let alone Night Spirit whom even the primordial 9 races feared. It was an uncontrollable fear that came from the depths of their bloodlines. All the cultivators present felt their scalps prickle and their hairs stood on end. Even for conjoint body mighty figures such as Extreme Fire and the others, their pupils constricted. Even though Night Spirit was trapped by an unknown golden chain, his claws and shimmering tailbone gave them shudders. This was a living being that was born to kill. Beast? Heavenly Secrets reached out and grabbed, forming a long whip that whipped Night Spirit heavily as he hollered, Behave yourself. Night Spirit's body trembled once more, almost convulsing. He could not fight his way out when he was bound by the heavenly god Locke. God Han Ling behind Heavenly Secrets stood out and tapped his fingers gently, sending a golden beam of light into the heavenly god Locke. Whoosh! The heavenly god Locke shone brightly and the iron hoop shrank continuously. Poof! 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 Blood sprayed from Night Spirit's neck and limbs once again. Under the suppression of the heavenly god Locke, Night Spirit transformed into his human form once more and laid on the ground with a weak aura and dispirited expression. In the primordial era, that beast destroyed countless living beings of various races and was bloodthirsty. If he is allowed to grow, there would never be peace in Tianhuang mainland. Heavenly Secrets said slowly. Since that's the case, it's better to kill this beast lest it wreaks havoc and massacres the world. That's right, kill it. I heard that the flesh of this beast is extremely nourishing. Kill it and we'll split it evenly. A series of shouts sounded from the crowd. The conjoint body mighty figures of the 9 immortal sects, 7 fiend sects and 6 Buddhist monasteries nodded in agreement without any objections. There was no way such a huge threat could be allowed to grow. No wonder Night Spirit was captured. So, there's a cultivator of Enigma Palace backing you guys. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded from outside the crowd. All the cultivators looked over. A cultivator flew through the air with black hair and green robes. He had refined features but there was a murderous look on his face as he strode over slowly. You're finally here. Heavenly Secrets smiled indifferently. I've been waiting for a long time. Chapter 1294 3 Daos. Chapter 1294 3 Daos. Dao Lord Desolate Martial. Immortal Sword had a venomous gaze and gritted his teeth. His essence spirit injury had yet to recover till this day. All these years, it could be said that he was reduced to such a state because of Desolate Martial Dao Lord. Back in Thousand Demon Valley, Desolate Martial was the one who snatched away the heaven-slaying sword art that should have belonged to him. If he had obtained the heaven-slaying sword art, his combat strength would have increased exponentially and he would not have lost to Extreme Fire later on. He would not have been hunted down by the Asura and fled in panic, causing his reputation to plummet. He would not have lost to Desolate Martial and ended up in such a state. His combat strength was greatly reduced with his essence spirit injured and could not match half of his peak strength. Immortal Sword gripped his fists instinctively when he saw Su Zimo appear. He knew that all the humiliation he had suffered over the years would all end today. He was going to square things with Su Zimo. He was not the only one with such thoughts. Desolate Martial, how dare you come and fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking? A Dharma characteristic Dao Lord of Glass Palace stood up slowly and exuded a powerful aura. His body seemed to reflect the glass light as he said slowly, It's time to settle the feud between you and Glass Palace. Who are you? Su Zimo asked casually without even looking at him. Dao Lord Feng Chen. The Dharma characteristic Dao Lord of Glass Palace said slowly. Dao Lord Feng Chen. I heard that his rainbow glass body has already cultivated to a height of 88 feet. He has a chance of making it to the top 10 of the Dharma characteristic ranking. 88 feet. Isn't that a foot taller than Desolate Marshal's Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic? Otherwise, where do you think Dao Lord Feng Qin got his confidence from? The death of Monk Yuan Bei was no longer a secret. If Su Zimo had not appeared, Glass Palace would have sought him out after the Dharma characteristic ranking as well. Back in the Dao inheritance ground, Su Zimo killed many titular disciples. That was a vicious slap to the mouths of the super sects. The reason why that extraordinary humiliation and deep hatred was temporarily put aside was because of the person beneath the Dragon Burial Valley. However, none of the super sects forgot about it. Desolate Marshal, I heard that you took away the legacy Dermic art of Zephyr Thunder Palace. How dare you? Indeed, right after Dao Lord Feng Qin, a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord of Zephyr Thunder Palace stood out and hollered with a thunderous voice, "Do you really think that Zephyr Thunder Palace is weak?" "And you are?" Su Zimo asked indifferently. "I'm Dao Lord 5 Thunder." The Dao Lord of Zephyr Thunder Palace said proudly. Dao Lord 5 Thunder has come out of seclusion as well. He was 5th on the previous Dharma characteristic ranking and his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic was 84 feet tall. I wonder how much he has grown over the years. He must definitely be confident if he dares to challenge Desolate Marshal. Heavenly Secrets smiled without saying anything at the side. He was in no hurry to attack. As long as Desolate Marshal appeared, he would definitely die. Is that the so-called strongest monster incarnate in history, Dao Lord Desolate Marshal? The Golden Crow Third Prince pouted his lips in disdain. He looks like nothing much. He's probably not going to last a single move against me. It's time to take revenge for my clansmen in Myriad Phenomenon City. Rakshasa Feng Tian twisted his neck and let out a series of crackling sounds. Don't get anxious. God Han Ling smiled gently. Let's watch the show first and let the humans fight among themselves. Wearing a wide hood, Wuxia let out 2 ghastly gazes in the darkness and exclaimed softly. He was way too familiar with that face. Back in the Dragon Bone Valley, the young master of the dragon race looked exactly like that. Of course, the aura of the young master of the dragon race was even more berserk and his blood chi was terrifying. Furthermore, he had a head of scarlet hair. However, this green-robed cultivator's aura seemed more restrained. There was no way they were the same person. However, Wuxia would not believe that they were unrelated. Interesting, let's see what secrets you have. Wuxia lamented internally and waited to see what would happen. Zimo's situation doesn't seem too good. Shangguanzi frowned slightly. No worries. Extreme Fire said, these Dharma characteristic paragons are probably not enough to pose a threat to Zimo. Shangguanzi said, however, these Dharma characteristic paragons are backed by conjoint body mighty figures of the super sections. If they lose, the latter won't be able to sit still. Humph. Extreme Fire said, if any conjoint body mighty figure dares to attack Zimo, I'll go and meet them. Although Patriarch Yuan Bei has passed away, Zimo still has me, Extreme Fire. I want to see who dares to bully the young and suppress Zimo. In midair, Su Zimo surveyed his surroundings and swept his gaze across the super sects such as Sword Sect, Heavenly Dipper Sect and Chaos Essence Sect. He said slowly, anyone else who wants to settle scores with me, Desolate Marshal, step forward at the same time. Desolate Marshal, you killed so many titular disciples. Do you really think that no one can restrain you? A Dao Lord of Chaos Essence Sect stood out and shouted, Stop talking. Su Zimo waved his hands. Before the Dao Lord of Chaos Essence Sect could finish, he was interrupted by Su Zimo. I'm not interested in your titles. Su Zimo said in a deep voice, I'm not here today to fight with you guys for the top of the Dharma characteristic ranking. I advise all of you not to provoke me. He was truly reminding those cultivators out of goodwill. How arrogant. Brazen. Before long, Dharma characteristic paragons from Heavenly Dipper Sect, Sword Sect, Illusion Fiend Cult, Malevolent Earth Sect and Cloud Rain Sect stood out and glared at Su Zimo with hostile expressions and killing intent. Amit Ba. A monk of Diamond Monastery from the Buddhist monastery stood out and clasped his palms together, chanting a Buddhist proclamation. Patron Desolate Marshal, you're the reason why Monk Black Gold of Diamond Monastery died, right? Su Zimo had nothing to do with Monk Black Gold's death in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Even Diamond Monastery is here to join the crowd. Su Zimo swept his gaze at him. Ha 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 ha. The Golden Crow Third Prince could not help but laugh and wave his hand. Interesting, interesting. A cultivator actually attracted the encirclement of the three immortal, Buddhist and Fiend Daos. He turned towards the voice. Although the Golden Crow Third Prince was in human form, Su Zimo could already sense that this person was extremely terrifying with a scorching blood chi. He was definitely from a foreign race. It was most likely one of the primordial 9 races. Given his current combat strength, he could carve out a path even against the encirclement of conjoint body mighty figures of the human race. However, a conjoint body mighty figure of the primordial 9 races would pose a huge threat to him. He might not even be able to leave alive, let alone save Night Spirit. Desolate Marshal, I don't care what you're here for. Since you're here, pay with your life for the fallen cultivators of Glass Palace. Dao Lord Feng Qin hollered and did not waste time on Su Zimo. Leaping up, he released his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic right away. Swoosh. A phantom soared into the skies from the top of Dao Lord Feng Qin's head. In the blink of an eye, it rose to a height of 88 feet and was indomitable. Its body shone with a rainbow-colored glass light, resembling a jade bangle that was carved with gems that shone with a blinding light. Boom. The Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic attacked all of a sudden and smashed towards Su Zimo. Scram. Su Zimo's attention was not on the Dharma characteristic paragons at all as he continued searching for traces of the primordial 9 races in the crowd. Without even looking, he threw out a top-tier Dharmic art of the Buddhist monasteries, the Great Sanskrit Light Fist. Dharmic powers were vast and surged like a sea. Dao Lord Feng Qin's rainbow glass body that was 88 feet tall seemed insignificant against the might of that punch. Its aura was completely gone. Boom. There was a deafening sound. Under countless gazes, the rainbow glass body was shattered by a single punch from Su Zimo. The crowd was astonished. Chapter 1295, Suppressing the Dharma Characteristic Ranking. Chapter 1295, Suppressing the Dharma Characteristic Ranking. Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics were the strongest methods of Dharma characteristic Dao Lords. An 88 feet tall Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic was legendary, and if this was the previous Dharma characteristic ranking, it would definitely be ranked at the top. But now, the rainbow glass body was shattered by a Dharmic art from Su Zimo. Ignoring the level of that Dharmic art, the Dharmic powers released by that attack were way too terrifying. Even an 88 feet tall Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic could not withstand it. Blood drained from the face of Dao Lord Feng Qin as he retreated and nearly fell from midair. All his pride had vanished completely against Su Zimo's punch. No, Desolate Marshal isn't at the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm. The moment Su Zimo attacked, there was no way he could hide his cultivation realm. Perfected Dharma characteristic realm. This Desolate Marshal has only advanced to the Dharma characteristic realm slightly more than 100 years ago, and he's already at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm. As expected of the number 1 monster incarnate of history. His cultivation speed is way too terrifying. A wave of shock and astonishment could be heard from the crowd. The Dharmic powers of Su Zimo's perfected Dharma characteristic realm after tempering his essence spirit from the immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects were unimaginably vast and were far beyond the Dharma characteristic realm. They were comparable to any conjoint body mighty figure present. All of you get lost. Su Zimo's gaze was like lightning as he looked at Dao Lord Five Thunder and the other Dharma characteristic Dao Lords and said coldly. In reality, those Dharma characteristic Dao Lords were already stunned by Su Zimo's punch and did not dare to act rashly. However, all of them were paragons and monster incarnates of the cultivation world after all. No one would be able to take it lying down if they were scolded in front of everyone. Desolate Marshal, aren't you way too arrogant? Dao Lord Five Thunder harumphed coldly. Right now, all the super sects are gathered with paragons. You're only at the Dharma characteristic realm. So what if you're strong? That means I can suppress you with my strength. Su Zimo was focused on Night Spirit and was unwilling to get entangled with those Dharma characteristic Dao Lords. Without a second word, he conjured the immortal trap seal and sent it towards Dao Lord Five Thunder. All right. Dao Lord Five Thunder was fearless as well and hollered, Let's see how long you can continue to be arrogant, desolate martial. Boom. Suddenly, a gigantic phantom appeared from Tao Lord Five Thunder's body and rose to 80 feet instantly. Furthermore, it showed no signs of stopping. In the blink of an eye, a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic that was surrounded by wind and thunder descended in midair, even taller than the rainbow glass body earlier on. 89 feet. 1,000 years ago, this Zephyr Thunder Dermic body was merely 84 feet tall. Now, Tao Lord Five Thunder had already condensed his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic to a height of 89 feet. Desolate Marshal, pay with your life for killing 2 monster incarnates of Chaos Essence Sect. On the other side, a Tao Lord of Chaos Essence Sect stood out and released his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic right away. Boom. A phantom soared into the skies. In the blink of an eye, it had grown to a height of 84 feet. Chaos Essence Chi Body. Desolate Marshal, I heard that you've got more than one heaven and earth Dharma characteristic. I want to see it for myself today as well. A Tao Lord of Heavenly Dipper Sect stood out and released his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic as well. A 85 feet Heavenly Dipper body. Bang, bang, bang. Illusion Fiend Dharma body. 18 meters metal body. Startling sword body. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 Dharma characteristic Tao Lords appeared and formed an encirclement around Suzimo. One after another, heaven and earth Dharma characteristics stood in midair with terrifying auras. They're joining forces to deal with Desolate Marshal. These Dharma characteristic Tao Lords are definitely ranked at the top of the Dharma characteristic ranking in terms of combat strength. To think that the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking would turn out like this. Suddenly, Immortal Sword stifled a chuckle when he saw that. Elder Immortal Sword, what's wrong? The disciple behind Immortal Sword, who was also a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord, asked softly. Immortal Sword shook his head gently and curled his lips with a mocking expression. These Dharma characteristic Tao Lords are no match for Desolate Marshal. If anyone present knew Suzimo's combat strength the best, Immortal Sword would definitely be one of them. That was because he was nearly killed by Suzimo in the bamboo forest. Then why didn't you stop those Tao Lords, Master? The disciple asked again. Immortal Sword smiled without saying anything. Right then, Heavenly Secrets looked over and the two of them exchanged glances with a tacit understanding. There was naturally no way they would step in to stop it. The more ruthless Desolate Marshal fought against the Dharma characteristic Tao Lords, the more there was no room for negotiation between him and the super sects. At that time, Desolate Marshal would become the enemy of the entire world. It wouldn't matter if he was the strongest monster incarnate in history or if he had imparted martial arts to all living beings, everything would just be a joke. On the battlefield. The moment the immortal trap seal descended, it was destroyed by the 89 feet tall Zephyr Thunder Dermic body. This Zephyr Thunder Dermic body was extremely close to a supreme Dharma characteristic and its dermic powers were pure to the extreme. Among the Daming Dermic seals, the immortal trap seal's power was average. That was why it could not take on Tao Lord Five Thunder's Zephyr Thunder Dermic body. Ha 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 ha. Tao Lord Five Thunder reared his head in laughter. That's all there is to Desolate Marshal. That's all. Suzimo sneered as well. The dermic seal in his hands changed and he bent his fingers as though he was conjuring a wheel, condensing a strange dermic seal that smashed towards the Zephyr Thunder dermic body. Among the Daming dermic seals, one of the two most ferocious and powerful dermic seals, the Great Vajra Wheel Seal. Boom. There was a deafening sound. An incomparably gigantic golden wheel appeared in midair, crushing forward continuously with a shuddering aura. The void beneath the golden wheel trembled and distorted. It was as though nothing could stop the gigantic golden wheel. Not even the 89 feet tall Zephyr Thunder dermic body. Boom. In the blink of an eye, the Great Vajra Wheel Seal collided against the Zephyr Thunder dermic body. Crack, crack, crack. A jarring sound echoed from the Zephyr Thunder dermic body as cracks appeared on its surface and spread continuously, covering its entire body instantly. Its dermic powers drained rapidly. Pust. The crowd was shocked. The 89 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was shattered by a single dermic seal from Suzimo as well. Tao Lord Five Thunder was shocked and spat out an arrow of blood. At the same time, the dozens of heaven and earth Dharma characteristics that were more than 80 feet tall around Suzimo moved at the same time and charged towards him. Suzimo's gaze intensified as he channeled his essence spirit and conjured hand seals with both hands, conjuring terrifying dermic arts instantly. Endless dermic powers surged towards Suzimo. Even the dermic powers of the heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were forcibly drawn over by Suzimo. The dermic powers in Suzimo's hands were almost boiling. Great Mount Meru Seal. Sandstorm. Avicii. Mighty Heavenly Dragon Transcendence. Sea Burial Secret Skill. Apocalyptic Fiend Fist. Instantly, Suzimo released more than 10 terrifying top-grade dermic arts and collided against the heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. Boom. The void seemed to explode instantly. A blinding semicircular light spread out suddenly with a heat wave. An incomparably domineering aftershock swept in all directions like a tornado. The cultivators retreated. Even some conjoint body mighty figures were shocked and retreated to avoid him. Was that the power of a Dharma characteristic? Before long the dust cleared. In midair there was only a figure in green robes. His black hair danced and his gaze was burning, emitting a powerful aura that swept through the 9 heavens and 10 earths like an emperor that was peerless. More than 10 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics shattered. Instantly the entire heaven and earth valley fell silent. Everyone realized that Dao Lord Desolate Martial had suppressed all the paragons on the Dharma characteristic ranking single-handedly. Chapter 1296, Enemy of the World. Chapter 1296, Enemy of the World. Swoosh. A glass light suddenly descended with a sharp killing intent, almost tearing through the void as it smashed down towards Suzimo's head. The glass light seemed to carry the might of heaven and earth and was unstoppable. Conjoint body mighty figure. Desolate Martial is invincible among the Dharma characteristic Dao Lords. In the end, the conjoint body mighty figures can't sit by idly. The mighty figure of Glass Palace is trying to kill Desolate Martial directly. The crowd was in an uproar. All of a sudden. Suddenly, a black shadow flew out from the crowd on the other side and struck the glass light. There was a loud bang. The black shadow revealed its true form. It was a gigantic weapon tripod. On the other side, the conjoint body mighty figure that attacked shuddered and staggered a few steps back. He had a terrible expression as he glared in the direction of the weapon tripod. Extreme fire. The Glass Palace mighty figure grit his teeth and spat out. It was only then that many cultivators realized what was happening. In that split second earlier, the mighty figure of Glass Palace wanted to kill Suzimo, but the latter was saved by mighty figure Extreme Fire of 100 Refinement Sect. What are you trying to do? Extreme Fire stood up slowly and his eyes seemed to be burning with flames. Today is the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking. Earlier on, I didn't say anything even when many Dharma characteristic Dao Lords surrounded Zimo together shamelessly. And now, even a conjoint body mighty figure wants to be equally shameless? Extreme Fire, this has nothing to do with the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking today. This is a feud between super sects like us and Desolate Martial. A mighty figure of Heavenly Dipper sect stood out with an unfriendly expression as well. A mighty figure of Chaos Essence sect had a murderous aura and said coldly, "That's right. The feud between us and Desolate Martial has to end today." It's fine to end a feud. Extreme Fire said, "The cultivation world is filled with strife and it's inevitable for there to be friendships and feuds. However, if you guys want to bully others with numbers and seniority, I'm not going to let that happen as long as I'm here. Extreme Fire, let me advise you not to get involved." Immortal Sword laughed coldly at the side. "Nobody will be able to protect Desolate Martial today. He'll definitely die." Extreme Fire put away his weapon tripod without any fear in his eyes as he said slowly, "Why? You so-called orthodox sects don't even know shame anymore? A group of conjoint body mighty figures are actually joining forces to deal with a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord. Is this how righteous immortal sects are?" A mighty figure of Snowdrift Valley stood out. It's the fortune of all living beings that Desolate Martial was able to establish the martial Dao and impart martial arts to all living beings. He established that eternal steel with incredible merit. If you guys insist on making things difficult for him, won't you be disappointing the hearts of all cultivators in the world? That's right. A mighty figure from one of the immortal sects, Clear Wind Temple, nodded as well. Although it's a personal feud, What does it mean if a few conjoint body mighty figures of the immortal, fiend and Buddhist sects join forces to deal with a single Dharma characteristic Tao Lord? Aren't you afraid of being laughed at by the future generation? Not all the super sects of the 9 immortal sects were against Su Zimo. A mighty figure of pure maiden sect stood out as well and sneered, although those from the immortal sects speak of benevolence and Tao, they're filled with scheming and conniving plots. What a joke. Amit Ba. A mighty figure of Dipankara monastery chanted a Buddhist proclamation softly as well. Patron Desolate Martial has supreme merit in giving to all living beings. Indeed, you guys should not be doing this. The impact of Desolate Martial establishing a Tao and imparting martial arts to all living beings was way too great for the cultivation world in Tianhuang mainland. That single incident pushed Su Zimo's reputation to its peak. Before long, 2 factions were formed among the immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sections. The people who wanted to kill Su Zimo were naturally led by Immortal Sword. Extreme Fire and the others were on Su Zimo's side. Of course, although the mighty figures of Snowdrift Valley and Clear Wind Temple were willing to speak up for Su Zimo, they might not wage war against the other mighty figures for the sake of Desolate Martial. Things are getting more interesting. The Golden Crow Third Prince clapped excitedly when he saw the chaos in the human cultivation world. I truly don't understand how we were defeated in the ancient war given the state of the human race. Rakshasa Feng Tian sneered. Piak, piak. While the 2 sides were in a stalemate, someone clapped from the side, attracting the gazes of many cultivators. Heavenly Secrets finally stood out. Ever since Su Zimo appeared, he had been watching coldly from the sidelines. Now that the situation was tense, he had to step in. Everyone, there's no need to argue. Heavenly Secrets smiled indifferently. Why don't we ask Tao Lord Desolate Martial first? If you aren't here for the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking today, what are you here for? That question was the key. Su Zimo did not hesitate and sneered, pointing at Night Spirit beneath Immortal Sword and the others. There's nothing to hide. I'm here today to take him away. Ah. The moment he said that, a cry sounded from the crowd. Night Spirit was a cruel and cold-blooded primordial taboo. Apart from the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking, all the cultivators gathered here today were here to witness Night Spirit's death. But now, Su Zimo had openly declared that he wanted to take away that extremely dangerous primordial taboo. Good, good, good. The smile in Heavenly Secrets' eyes intensified. As expected of Desolate Martial. You're truly open and honest. A primordial taboo was the enemy of all 10,000 races. Su Zimo's action was equivalent to standing opposite the 10,000 races. Nobody dared to imagine what sort of a bloodbath that primordial taboo would cause in Tianhuang mainland if it was alive. That was an uncertain danger. It had to be killed. The immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects did not doubt that at all. This time round even the mighty figure of Snowdrift Valley frowned and reminded, Desolate Martial, don't be foolish. If you want to save him, no one can save you. Those were truly earnest words. Unfortunately, Su Zimo was determined. He had made many preparations including his trump card, the Dragon True Body. There was no way he would back down. Extreme Fire's expression turned grim as well. Zimo, you have to think carefully about the possible consequences of your decision. Extreme Fire sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness. At that time you'll turn the entire world against you. Even I won't be able to protect you. Even if you manage to escape, you might not survive in Tianhuang mainland. I know. Su Zimo replied indifferently, Master, there's no need to say more. This is my decision. There's no need for you and 100 Refinement sect to interfere. Senior Crane, Nian Qi, there's no need for you guys to attack either. Turning around, Su Zimo said to everyone from Ethereal Peak. Thereafter, he looked at Demonist G of Pure Maiden sect and shook his head slowly. Su Zimo knew that if he chose to save Night Spirit, people like Extreme Fire and the others would stand by his side without hesitation as well. However, those people would definitely fall into the vortex and might be minced to death. That was because he knew that the enemies this time round were not only conjoint body mighty figures of Sword Sect and Chaos Essence Sect, but also the ferocious beings of the primordial 9 races that were hidden among the cultivators. That was the reason why Su Zimo did not inform Monkey and the others about Night Spirit's capture. Chapter 1297, Time for you to pay with your life. Chapter 1297, Time for you to pay with your life. Everyone, you heard it too. Desolate Marshal clearly knows that this beast is a taboo that wreaked havoc in the Primordial era, but he still wants to save it. What are your intentions, Desolate Marshal? Heavenly Secrets asked indifferently. Amit Ba. Patron Desolate Marshal, this matter is extremely important. If this taboo grows up, it'll probably cause endless bloodshed in Tianhuang mainland. The monk of Formless Monastery shook his head gently. That's right, we can't let it go. This beast is savage and has a murderous nature. If we let it go, there will definitely be trouble and no one in Tianhuang mainland will be spared. The crowd was in a frenzy. In reality, many cultivators did not understand the taboo race at all and did not have any deep feud with Night Spirit. The reason why they stood out was merely out of fear towards Night Spirit. Suddenly, Su Zimo laughed with a mocking expression and surveyed his surroundings. You guys said that he's savage and murderous. Now, let me ask you guys, back in Myriad Phenomenon City when the Rakshasa and God race massacred human cultivators, who was the one who stood out to suppress them? Was it you? How about you? Su Zimo pointed at the crowd and shouted. The crowd was silent. No one replied. Although most of the cultivators present had not experienced the battle in Myriad Phenomenon City, they had a rough understanding of what happened. If not for Su Zimo and Night Spirit, the human paragons would have been annihilated and buried in Myriad Phenomenon City. Even if the ancestor of Night Spirit was violent and brutal in the Primordial era, what has that got to do with him? Su Zimo said, I watched Night Spirit grow up since he was young. Although he's good at killing, he never kills for no reason. Still nobody spoke. Su Zimo looked around. A dense crowd of cultivators stood in Heaven and Earth Valley. Although there were many sects and factions gathered, most of the cultivators looked indifferent. Nobody was willing to listen to his logic. In the hearts of many cultivators, their first impression had already taken root. Su Zimo shook his head gently. He knew that there was no need to explain further. Fufu, that's easy for you to say. The mighty figure of Heavenly Dipper sect sneered, a leopard never changes its spots. This beast's bloodline is filled with killing and bloodthirst. It'll be too late by the time he starts his massacre. Desolate Marshal, you have to think carefully and not be foolish. Out of goodwill, the mighty figure of Snowdrift Valley said in a deep voice, even if you can't bear to see him in trouble, it's impossible to save him. Everyone's gathered today. Notwithstanding the Dharma characteristic Dao Lords present, look at the number of conjoined body mighty figures from the super sects such as the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects as well as the 5 heretical doctrines. Notwithstanding the fact that you won't be able to save Night Spirit, even if you manage to do so, you won't be able to escape. Extreme Fire was not the only one, even the mighty figure of Snowdrift Valley could tell. The reason why so many conjoined body mighty figures of Sword Sect, Chaos Essence Sect and the other immortal sects were here was most likely to deal with Su Zimo. An impenetrable trap had been set up here a long time ago such that even ants could not escape. As long as Su Zimo dared to attack, he would definitely die. Most importantly, killing Night Spirit today was the main purpose of everyone. Anyone that stood out to stop that would be crushed into dust. Extreme Fire could not do it. Even 100 Refinement sect behind him could not do it. In the face of the tides, those that obeyed flourished and those that countered died. Keep an eye on Xiaoning and don't let her leave at all. The mighty figure of Elixir Yang sect said slowly. Yaoyin, you're not allowed to attack either. The mighty figure of Pure Maiden sect said slowly. The only thing Pure Maiden sect and Elixir Yang sect could do was to help neither side. The current situation was extremely obvious. Whoever dared to help Desolate Marshal would become a great enemy for super sects like Sword Sect and Chaos Essence Sect. Furthermore, Enigma Palace was the host of this matter. Enigma Palace had an extraordinary status in Tianhuang mainland and most cultivators would not question it. Extreme Fire had a grim expression. He had not expected that today's matter would turn into a situation where there was no room for negotiation. First, you should leave. Right then, Night Spirit gulped and said. The iron hoops that were initially around his neck shrank once more as sharp spikes protruded with fresh blood flowing out. Under the restriction of the Heavenly God lock, Night Spirit had to endure endless pain for every single word he said. However, he still raised his head and looked at Su Zimo in the distance despite the wound tearing. First they want to deal with you. Don't fall for it. Don't worry, Night Spirit, I'll definitely take you away. Su Zimo's gaze turned increasingly cold as he looked at the blood on Night Spirit's body. The killing intent around him was almost materialized. One after another, gigantic stars appeared in the firmaments. Tisk tsk. Your brotherhood sure runs deep. Immortal Sword sneered, that's perfect. I'll send the two of you to hell today. Anyone unrelated to today's matter, make way. Su Zimo was filled with killing intent as he said coldly, I'm going to take Night Spirit away with me today. I'll kill anyone who stops me. What a bold claim. Chaos Essence Sect's mighty figure sneered, who do you think you are? You think you're strong enough to go against the entire world? Heavenly Secrets said indifferently, I'll say this as well. Whoever helps Desolate Marshal will be going against the entire cultivation world, the human race and the 10,000 races of the world. They will be punished by the world. Ha ha ha. Immortal Sword burst into laughter. Desolate Marshal, you can't even protect yourself. Yet you want to kill others? How laughable. Immortal Sword, it's time for you to pay with your life. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded from outside the crowd. It was hoarse and deep, but it possessed a terrifying fiend power. Who is there? Immortal Sword panicked and shouted instinctively. Although that voice sounded familiar, he could not believe it. Who would dare to stand out at a moment like this? All the cultivators turned towards the voice as well. In the void not far away, a black-robed cultivator walked over slowly. His white hair fell to his shoulders and his eyes were pitch black. His hands were slumped and in his right hand, there was a saber that was coiled with fiend chi. Ah, it's the Asura. What Asura? It's Yen Beichen. Isn't Yen Beichen already dead? The Asura saber has already returned to Asura sect and the current Asura is already someone else. The crowd discussed. Su Zimo glanced at the Asura and his heart ached. After not seeing him for nearly 100 years, the Asura's hair had turned white. It was unknown what sort of pain he had endured alone all these years. But your essence spirit injury, impossible. Immortal Sword looked at Yen Beichen who was walking over slowly in disbelief and shrieked. He discovered to his shock that Yen Beichen's essence spirit had already recovered. Yen Beichen backed down. You're a cultivator of Asura sect. Don't implicate the entire sect because of you. A Dharma characteristic Dao Lord of Asura sect stood out and hollered at Yen Beichen with a cold expression. The mighty figure of Asura sect did not stop him as though it was only right. Who are you? Yen Beichen's gaze shifted as he asked expressionlessly. I'm the Asura of the current era. The Dharma characteristic Dao Lord had a proud expression and flipped his palm, already holding the Asura saber. Someone like you is worthy of being called the Asura? Yen Beichen slashed in reverse towards the Dharma characteristic Dao Lord's head. A black light tore through the air with a suffocating aura of death. Before the titular disciple who referred to himself as the Asura could react, he was sliced into two by Yen Beichen and his body and essence spirit were destroyed. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.